and welcome to this week's live stream of It's a Fandom Thing. We are continuing our celebration of Pride Month with a discussion about a fanfic. So we're going to be discussing the Destiel fanfic 91 Whiskey. We are going to be spoiling it. So if you haven't read this and you are watching this or you join, that's why I have spoilers on the bottom, then you may want to leave. I don't know if you care or don't care. But yeah, it's totally up to you. But before I introduce my panelists that you can see right now on the screen, before I introduce them, just a couple of quick notes. Number one, our support of the show has changed a little bit. Like if you want to support us, I was trying to do it where I didn't realize they were going to just stop our monthly supporters when they started the subscription thing, but they did without telling me. So if you were a monthly supporter and you got an email saying we're no longer taking support, that's not completely true. It's just that it's changed a little bit. So let me just put this up here. So you can support the show now by subscribing today. So it's just $2.99 a month. That's it. And that's the only level we have. And you can help us continue to provide content that you've come to love, like this, like our live streams. Plus 50% is still split between one Black Lives Matter organization and one Stop Asian Hate organization. And it will also come with bonus content. So right now, it used to be available to everyone, but right now, the bonus episode that Carla and I did, where we just talked about Christian effing Bale, is now is subscriber only content. So you can only listen to that wonderful, beautiful, beautiful short episode if you subscribe. You'll also get a shout out on our live streams. So on this, you'd get a shout out. So the whole world could know that you are supporting us. And then after 6 months of continued support, you'll get the chance to either be on an episode, which includes possibly a live stream, or you can determine the topic of an episode within limits. So depending on that. So go ahead and follow that link to subscribe today. I'm going to put that in the comments at the end of this, towards the end of the episode as well. But just wanted to put that up there. And then also just really quickly, here's our bingo card. Hi, Bailey. Bailey, who is always here and the greatest supporter. Thank you, Bailey. So here's the bingo card. I've changed it a little bit and added more things in there. I will already tell you that you are definitely, Pride is the free space for this month, but you're definitely going to get, I'll just say it now because it's going to be said continuously, you're going to get fanfic, you're going to get supernatural. So those are automatically on there. So go ahead and mark those. But yeah, play along and you could win a free podcast sticker. Okay, so I'm going to introduce my panel and they can tell me one thing that they're into right now in pop culture. Start with you, Carla.
Hi, I am Carla. And this week, or rather today, I am into pretending that I'm going to skim 91 Whiskey and instead just reread the whole thing. Because I was going to just, I'll just skim through some parts just to, soak myself back into the world. And it didn't happen. It's just me rereading the whole thing and being like, oh my God, what happens next? Even though I've read it like 30 times.
Yeah, I skimmed, but time. But I was wondering if you were going to reread the whole. What number are you up to? Like, how many times have you read this?
Like, why bother counting? I mean, at this point, it's just me making myself sad that that I only have so much life before I can no longer read 91 Whiskey.
It's funny. And Judy, what are you into right now?
Well, I too have been rereading 91 Whiskey, but I did the same thing. I'm like, I skipped to the end. I'm like, I'll just read the last couple chapters. Nope, got to do it. So I had to start all over. I'm reading through it, and I'm up to chapter 17. So I'm like, I didn't quite make it. But since I read the end first, I remember what happens and everything. But no, really what I'm into is the new Loki, like probably everybody else. The first episode came out this week. I will not spoil anything, but it set it up. It looks like it's going to be really fun and exciting. I can't wait. And I see that Tanya is ready.
Oh, that's hilarious. Tanya's going to be filled with props. I mean, not filled with props. She's going to be filling our screen with props. Maybe she will be filled with props.
I actually have a prop right beside me.
Oh,
I have guests in my house this week, so I had to like find a quiet spot. So I'm up in my bedroom where I don't have like a real desk. So I'm sitting at my vanity and I needed somewhere to put my mouse. So what I used as like a mouse pad is my brand new Destiel anthology that I am super excited about. I can't wait to start reading it. It's beautiful.
Awesome. And I think Meg's looking for some stuff too. So I just have a feeling.
There you go.
And Meg, what are you into?
Yeah. So I thought I was going to be smart. I'd be like, you know what? Twitter has a 91 Whiskey bot. And I already followed them. And I was like, I'll just go through the bot and I'll get some highlights, some quotes and stuff just to kind of like the idea that I need to refresh my memory on it is hilarious because I finish it and then I almost immediately want to start it up again because I'm a garbage person. But yeah, so I was looking at the bot and yeah, like Judy and Carla, I'm just reading it again now. But other than that, I started watching Why Women Kill on Paramount Plus, and it is a hoot. Like, it's a dark comedy. It's a drama. I'm not usually a huge fan of Jennifer Goodwin, but she's in it and she does a real good job. So, yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Get that true crime in there.
Exactly right. It's different time periods and true, but it's not true crime. It's a fiction, but I'm like, yeah, I totally see what.
Oh, it's a
Is that a bingo space?
See, I thought it was like an. Is that a bingo? No, it's not a bingo space. Maybe it should be.
No, it's not a docuseries or anything.
Oh.
It's not the Pierce Morgan thing.
Oh, okay. See, I was thinking it was like one of
gross.
those. No, I was thinking it was one of those like TLC, not TLC, but I can't remember the station that does
the
like
ID?
all those true crime. Yes, thank you. Yes.
No, it's on Paramount Plus, and it's a fiction, and it's Jennifer Goodwin, Lucy Liu, and I can't remember her name, but she was on The Good Place. She was anyway. But it takes place in 3 different time periods, and it's each of their stories.
Yeah, okay.
And it's really fun.
Okay.
And yes, and Bailey's correct. I also convince more people to read 91 Whiskey who've never even seen Supernatural.
Well, you could read it without having seen Supernatural, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Tanya, what are you into right now?
Yeah. So I am into starting 6 different books at the same time and stressing out about not finishing them, which is very normal. But I will say I'm going to shout out for Hap and Leonard, which is based on a series of books by Joe Lansdale. And I don't know how I missed this show. It's all on Netflix now. It's 6 episodes a season, and it's really interesting. I don't even know how to describe the genre. It's kind of like amateur detectives in a very racially segregated and racist part of Texas, which, yeah. And it's about 2 best friends who are very different from each other in terms of social statuses and them kind of going through these different escapades. But it's sort of dark comedy, maybe a little bit as well. And anyway, yeah, I'm reading those books, and I had to binge the whole series because it was one of those like, what's going to happen? So, and it only takes 18 hours of dedicated sitting on your butt time. So it's great. And if you get thirsty during that time, and during this episode, because you might, as we're talking about some thirsty topics, I recommend it's a fandom thing, water bottle from Redbubble. And I just also want to say you should buy this, because then you can do things like go to events now that we're starting to open up again and everything. And you can say things like, I came here to do 2 things: kick water and drink ass. And I'm all out of ass.
Oh, I love you so much.
I even unmuted
myself for that one.
I even unmuted myself to laugh because
nice.
that joke is of the same par of what we get from Dean and 91 Whiskey too, which is amazing.
Yeah, I've literally told some of the jokes from that in other contexts and thought, I wonder if anyone will know where I got this from, because I don't necessarily talk about fanfic in my professional life, but I've told the scarecrow joke. So
always.
I personally love Cass's one joke the best. The cross between a joke and a rhetorical question. It's the best.
It's a good one.
Awesome. And the actress in the show is Kirby Howell Baptiste. Yeah. And she was also in this short-lived show that was actually really good called Downward Dog. And yes, you do have voiceover from a dog that talks, but it's not cheesy. And it's really a bummer that was canceled after one season, because it really was an excellent show. And the guy that Carla and Meg thirst over, Tim Olmsson, is in it. Briefly. One episode.
Like, you could say Tim O and it could be Timothy Amundsen or Timothy Oliphant, and
that's true.
Both would apply.
That's true.
Blanket.
That's true. And this is Erin, and what I'm into right now is on Spotify. There's a Queer as Folk playlist. So that has music that was in the show. And sadly, if you watch Queer as Folk on Showtime or anywhere where it's not the DVDs, sadly, you are not going to get the music that was original, but that was originally on it when originally aired, which is very sad, because like, you don't get the Proud song, you don't get a lot of really great music that if you ever went dancing all the time, you'll listen to it and you'll want to go to a club like instantly. So I highly recommend that. And then quickly before we start, I'm just going to update you, Bailey, and anyone else who has a bingo card. Of course, Pride's the Free Space, Supernatural, Fanfic. The whole panel has laughed. I've said awesome. I mentioned Queer as Folk, mentioned music, because that's a new thing on there. So you might have already won. Who knows?
15 minutes in.
You need to add, for me, Tanya does prop comedy and terrible jokes.
Yeah. Yeah. So you may have already won. That would have been a very quick bingo. But I mean, last week, I don't think you won bingo. So no one won bingo last week. So it would make up for that. Okay. So let's get into 91 Whiskey. And I just want to go around first and ask, I know everybody loves this fic, so I don't have anything of saying, do you like this? So what were your first impressions? I kind of already know. What were your first impressions, Carla, when you read this fic?
Well, when I first, okay, so a friend of mine was talking about this fic that has gone on for ages and it gets posted so slowly. I was like, oh, tell me what it's called so I can check it out. And I got, she sent me the link, and that was Lauren from Sort of Brilliant Podcast. And so I start reading it. Well, I look at what it's about, and it's a war set fic. And I was like, because I don't really do war stuff. And I'm like, I'm not really interested. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to enjoy this too much, but she says it's good, so I'll give it a try. Instantly hooked. It is one of the best written just pieces of literature, period. Any genre, any medium, it doesn't matter. This is just one of the best pieces of literature you could ever read. It is so well researched, and the characters have very specific voices and they're very well fleshed out. And I cannot recommend it enough. If somebody's out there and hasn't read it, I don't care if you've watched the show or not. You don't have to have watched the show. It is excellent as a standalone, and you should definitely give it a try. You will not regret it. I
mean, you might regret it. It hurts.
Only if you're friends with us, because then we will torture you with, saying, hey, sweetheart, whenever we feel like it, or just being like, it feels like this. And then you'll just be a puddle of tears and just, But other than that, I mean, just don't talk to me ever again. Just read the fic. That's all I want.
Just don't ever talk to me again, but read the fic. So,
and Carla, I do point out, yes,
Carla is okay with losing friends as long as they discover the fic.
Listen, I'm just here to make the world a better place. I don't need to make friends to do that. I'm here to improve people's lives. And if it takes me losing a friend over it, I will take that. I will also just show you my Destiel trash shirt. Yes.
Awesome.
Damo.
Why yo a tea? Oh.
Yes. Love it. Like, oh yes, I have to own this. Thank you.
awesome. And then Judy.
Okay, so there's a fanfic trifecta, and almost all fics have one or two of these three, and very few of them have all of them. It's well written, like the grammar's good, all of that kind of stuff. It's a good story, and it's in character. Lots of fanfics have two or one of those three, but they're missing the third. And when you find a fic that has all three, grab it and hold on to it and read it again and again. And this is one of those. I just love it. We'll talk about characterization in a little bit, but it was just a joy to read that fic, and you just become so immersed into it. As Carla mentioned, it's so well researched. The fact that the author, she obviously did extensive research, and then she put these characters that we already know and love into the actual movements and battles and everything of the 1/16th. So we just really get to experience, not just the Dean and Cass story, but we get to experience this brutality of combat and the miserable conditions and the dirt and the grime and the cold and even the smell. Like when they all take off their shoes, I'm just like, it's raw and it's terrible, just like war. But it's just beautifully done, beautifully written. Such a great story from the combat point of view and from the characters. And from a personal note, I was stationed in Germany with the 5th Corps. So every time that, they mention like V Corps movements and what the V Corps is doing, I'm like, hey, that's my group. And it's kind of cool to see what they did during World War II. So I really like that about it. And then one of the other things I both love and kind of simultaneously hate about the fic and Supernatural is the constant push-pull of the Dean and Cass story. They make a little progress and then they take 2 steps back and they get close and then they pull back and then they get closer and something else, separates them, and just on and on and on. So that constant just pendulum of their relationship is very much like canon. The same thing happens on Supernatural, but that's kind of a fascinating, to me, part of this fic. Yeah, so I just love it. And the other thing that I love is it's reminiscent of their canon relationship, is that they're just these 2 soldiers who are just constantly fighting a war. In canon, they're 14 years long. They've been fighting wars constantly and getting closer. So yeah, I love the parallels to Supernatural, and as a standalone story, I think it does amazing.
Awesome. And then Tanya.
Wait a minute.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. And Meg, because it's the way it's laid out.
I know it's been a while.
I can't believe you would censor my wife. Like, I'm so offended.
I'm sorry.
Well,
Meg, I did not mean to do that. It's my eyes are just naturally like, oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Meg.
No, it's fine. So my first impression of this fic was it's gonna hurt a lot. And I was very, very correct. It hurt a lot. And it didn't even necessarily hurt because of Dean and Cass. There's a lot of angst and pain with that relationship. And I think we can talk a little bit more about that later. But the writer, the author, Komodibitz, did such a good job with making us care about all of these side characters. And I think that's also something we'll talk about in a little bit. But we're in a war, and with that comes loss and casualty. And the grief and the loss and the pain and the anxiety is written really, really well. And I completely agree with Judy when she talks about those are usually 3 things in fics. And I will say 91 Whiskey ruined me for most fanfics, to be perfectly honest. And on top of that, Destiel has ruined me for any other show's fan fictions. We're so blessed to have such talented, amazing fic writers in this fandom that it's like, I feel so bad sometimes reading other ones and I'm just like, this isn't right. But Carla's the one who made me start reading this. Then we started a support group chat with some of our other friends who were reading it at the same time. And it was the opposite of support. It was just like randomly spewing lines from the fic that would hurt people. Yeah. It's kind of like how we bullied you, Aaron, into doing this. But it would be like, hey, we're just going to say, hey, sweet, or just any random little line from the fic. And there'd be 7 people in that group being like, how dare you? And I feel like that's why we all seem to have perpetually been reading it over and over again, because it would remind us.
Well, it's kind of like we're vampires and we're starting a colony. So,
Yeah.
you know, like I got bitten and so I'm fighting all my friends and they're fighting all their friends. It's either a vampire colony or an MLM type selling thing.
Yeah. And I do want to mention what Bailey said about one of her favorite things is the way the war drives the plot. And that is absolutely so true. And I feel like that's where it's kind of similar to the show, because the show is just going along and Destiel was never meant to happen within the show. And it's just like, no, love will happen and we don't care. But yeah, that's my first impression. I'm very brief. Thanks for noticing me. I'm going to change my name to Afterthought.
I totally was because that's the way my eyes go.
I know, but I'm totally just going to tease you about it.
I mean, that's fine. I understand. It's hard to look away from me. I mean, I just have a shining
You
aura.
are glorious.
Yeah. I drank
You
so
are
much
glorious.
coffee. It's just
Not to mention Thor behind you.
Not to mention the attractive men behind
I'm
you.
glorious.
That's beautiful.
I will consider that a tangent. So we've also gone tangent on our bingo card.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay. So Tanya.
So now down to like actual business here. I'm sure that I heard about this from Judy and you all on doing a podcast. So I'm part of the group now. I guess I got the MLM. I'm a new this at the lowest level of the pyramid member, and I've got to get my 10 people to read it.
Carla's at the top.
Yeah.
She's driving.
I already got my blue and green Cadillac.
It's not a Cadillac. It's a
yes.
tank. She's just driving around in a tank.
I think it should be a Vespa and a sidecar personally, but okay. So what I liked about it, I think Judy had a really great characterization, and I just want to preface this by I do read fan fiction, but I'm not necessarily I always say I'm somewhat agnostic about shipping. I definitely see this ship and I understand it, but I don't need to have it be canon always. So I like to kind of characterize that because I think that this was so great. And I think it helps to know that even if you're not the biggest shipper in the world who will read everything, this was amazing. This could absolutely have been, it's so rare to find a fic that both fits the world and the characters, but is an AU and an alternative universe. And I like those because I like to see what writers can do with that. But that could also stand alone and not reference the source material. It could absolutely be its own thing. For those of us who have who have watched Supernatural, there's a lot of insider knowledge and little references that we pick up on, which is always fun. And the other thing I'll add is that I love it when I learn something from reading something that was just meant to be for funsies, right? For coming down from reading all my depressing statistics that I have to read for research. And I feel like I learned a lot about World War II, frankly, and this particular campaign just through the amount of research that was done for this. And I actually looked up a few, I don't know if you have a thing on the bingo for Tanya drops academic references, but I can do that now if we want to. Like I was curious about this because I actually heard years ago, I'll just say this and then we'll move on. Years ago in grad school, I remember being at a seminar and someone saying something about World War II was like a national coming out experience because men were over the gender segregation led a lot of people to have an opportunity to, you know, explore those relationships and not have as much oversight, maybe, or social oversight, or a little bit of looking the other way about it. And I'm not at all trying to like diminish the experience. Someone characterized it that way, and I thought that is really interesting. But at that time, I didn't have time to go look at research. And when I was reading this, it made me think of that. So before the session today, I went and looked up if that was accurate, and I did find some research. There's apparently a really good book called "Coming Out Under Fire," which is about U.S. Service people and being same-sex, identifying with their attraction, and that was also made into a film in the 90s. And what's interesting about it is the book and the film came out during the don't ask, don't tell history in our military. There's a British one called Queen and Country by Emma Vickers, and that's from 2015. And there's one about Australia called A Homosexual Institution, Same-Sex Desire in the Army During World War II, and that's from 2013. So I just think I just wanted to add that there's increased attention to actual trying to include that history and talk about what those experiences were like or would have been like looking at actual firsthand history records. So there you go. Tanya drops academic stuff so you can feel good about listening to a talk about a fanfic.
Just a photograph of two good friends roll in the grass.
Yes.
You're not the only one. Every time I read this or any other one that's like set in history, I keep another tab open so I can look up stuff, words that I hear or places. I have a map open that I can trace where they're going on each of the cities. Well, so yeah, I'm a nerd too.
There actually is an interactive map. I'm not sure if it's finished. An interactive map for 91 Whiskey that goes through the campaign and kind of references the chapters.
Very cool.
In there, and that's really, really cool. I can't remember if it's finished or not, but it's really.
They just make it with like Google Maps or something. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's made for. I loved World War II. You know, it's my favorite war. Besties. No, I've always been really interested in World War II. One of my and one of the things that really hit me, I forgot to say this when I was reading this, is so they do storm Omaha Beach, and one of my dear friends who's since passed away, he stormed Omaha on D-Day. And when Saving Private Ryan came out, he had never talked about war. He had never, ever. He was 19 when he joined, or he lied, but he was 19 on D-Day. And he never talked about it. Saving Private Ryan came out, and that's all he wanted to talk to me about. Like, I was doing a school project, and I interviewed him, and then that's all we would talk about. It was his time in the war. And reading this fic, I mean, watching Saving Private Ryan is one thing, but reading this fic and reading a lot more of the internal dialogues of what is going on while this horror is happening really hit home a lot harder for me than I think it would have had I not spent hours and hours talking to someone who was there and feeling like I was back in his head with his, like, this visceral terror. And I thought it was just amazing. And it was so well written and so heartbreaking.
And I just
have a Go ahead.
I don't know how to raise my hand on this platform.
You don't have to. Just go ahead and say it.
Just try to beat out Carla.
No, I want to let Carla talk, but I just wanted to add, like, I agree. And I think just it's important to kind of acknowledge that there was so little acknowledgement of they didn't really understand PTSD. They didn't understand didn't acknowledge it. And so men in gender roles were so screwed up and hurtful in terms of like not allowing people to process it. But yes, the Normandy invasion was really interesting to read. I have a great uncle who was there that day. And unfortunately I was too young to have gotten to like talk about it, but the whole idea of like never talking about it and that just being not something you discuss. My grandfather was in the Pacific side of things at the very end, but in parts of Asia, right, and Japan right after the bombs have been dropped. And it's challenging because even talking about it, there was definitely a framing, and there's a like, you do not talk about this stuff, you talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, and at my friend's funeral, his son, he had 7 sons, he lost his only daughter, and I think might be why we connected so well. Son thanked me for that project I did because his dad had been holding on to it for like over 50 years. And then once the dam broke, he just all the time, and there were all these stories, and his was a very heartbreaking, horrifying story that I won't really get into here. But to finally have that release and to finally be able to say that, because his son was just like, he never, ever talked about it with anybody. But yes, and Lawrence is 100% correct.
That's what I want to shout out to Lawrence and just put up what Lawrence just said about the fic. And this fic is a masterpiece. You can feel the seriousness behind the research. It makes this story much more credible and goes beyond the status of a fic to become a full-fledged novel. Do you agree with that? Yeah. And then Carla,
somebody just needs to make a darn movie out of it because it's
I wish.
Amazing.
Can you imagine?
Have you seen the Netflix, like a fan made a Netflix graphic?
Like preview kind of thing? Oh, a Netflix one? No. I
As if it was a Netflix show. And
there's a ton of fan art.
Oh,
for
yeah.
This
Which
one.
I
We should have brought some up. That would have been cool. But,
well, that involves making sure that the artists are cool with it and everything.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that Meg and I, in our little support group / bullying group, we have a friend who's actually, she's German, and she lives near some of these places where what happens in 91 Whiskey takes place. And so she became super interested in all of the history. So she started doing like a bunch of research and really, looking more deeply into kind of like following the map, so to speak, and trying to see, oh my gosh, like, the way that they describe this town, the way that this person has written all of this, it just captures it perfectly. And she started looking for like pictures of pre-war, and then she would go by and she would send me pictures. She's like, I'm standing where, like this happened. And, it's, I can only imagine that for her, it's also just a really cool thing of being able to be in the place where this story is taking place. And that just goes to show not only the fact that it's a cool thing, but that creative expression and writing can be so powerful, and it can lead you to connect with yourself and with the places where you are in a whole different way. And I think that's just like the magical power of art in general.
That's actually one of the things that kind of I sort of connected with having been in Germany. When I got to Germany, I was 19. I didn't know or care about history. It was over and done with. It was certainly not something that was important to me. But being there in the place where you're literally surrounded by history, you cannot get away from it. I mean, there's, down the road, there's Roman ruins, and the town that I lived in, I remember talking to the secretary of our office was German, who had always lived in Zweibrücken. And there were 2 buildings in the town. One was a church, and just across the street from the church was a Gasthaus, like a little hotel. And they were like sunken. Like if you're walking around town, they're like 6 steps down to go to those 2 buildings. And they're the only ones. And I was asking her, why are those 2 buildings sunken? And she said, they're not. They're the only things that were left standing after World War II. So we just crushed down the rubble and built the rest of the city on top of it. So the whole city is on 6 feet of rubble. And so just when you're just surrounded by history like that, everywhere you go, it's just a part of the lifeblood of the people of Germany. I got much more interested in it. And, this fic just kind of brought all that right back.
I just love listening to everyone talk about it, because I told our panelists before we started, I've read this fic. I've read it. It was Carla who forced it upon me. She didn't force it upon me. Because as I've mentioned before on here, I used to ship Destiel and then I stopped, but I still read fanfic with them. Even though I'm very selective about it because of the way Dean is portrayed. I actually disagree 99% of the fic out there in Destiel as far as the way he's portrayed. And she turned me on to this one, and I really did like it. What I really like about this fic, though, more than the fic itself, is the impact that it has had on other people that have read it. And I think that is so powerful, because people like to laugh at fanfic, and people like to make fun of fanfic, and people like to think that that's not serious writing or that's not serious art, and people just think it's just porn. And yes, this fic does have graphic sex scenes in it, but it's about a lot more than that. And most good fic out there is about a lot more than just that. I don't know what but I think that that's what's so powerful about this one personally. And there are a few others that fit into this too, is the impact that it has had on everybody. And I think if people were to read this, people that scoff at fanfic, that turn their noses up at it and think, oh, that's not serious writing and that's not what real writers do. If you were to read this, I think you would see that as complete BS. And you would find that there are some truly talented writers out there. And this isn't just an anomaly, that this actually is the way a lot of fanfic is written, is really well. I mean, there are some writers out there that could do a better job than the writers of the show, than the writers of the movie, than the writers of whatever it is.
Absolutely.
And so I just really want to make sure to just say that, because it really irks me. And I know I used to think that way years and years ago. I was like, what is fanfic? And I think it's because I only read certain ones that were like not really necessarily polished. But when you really do a deep dive and you really look at it, and I agree, Supernatural does have some of the best fanfic writers out there. And so when you really do your research, you will find that this stuff is not just frivolous, and it helps a lot of people. And so I just applaud all the fanfic writers out there, because really it's a lot to put yourself out there, even if you're not putting your real name. But yeah, and then I want to just say really quickly what I'm going to put this up from Bailey, that she actually has a letter that found in a thrifted book written from one soldier who was there on Omaha to a friend of his who was there as well. He mentions it brought back bad memories to go back. Oh, so this must have been to go back to Germany. Sorry. Threw myself off there. But I just wanted to make sure to say that. So all you fanfic writers out there, please know that what you are doing is amazing, and what you are doing for people that are fans of certain ships and certain shows that never, ever get to see their ships become reality also means a lot. So just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and I just to pop up, I think one of the most impressive things about this fan fiction, and I can't be 100% sure, but I'm 99% sure I read this from the person who wrote it. I believe they were 15 when they started writing this. Oh, and really? To have that kind of maturity and that voice at 15 is just, it blows my mind. So
and the research
I'm shocked. I pictured a 30-year-old whenever I did too. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. This person was a young writer.
Wow.
And they have since left. Wow. They've actually left the fandom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they I think they left about 4 years ago after the last timestamp for this fic.
Wow. Wow. That's even more impressive. Wow.
Yeah. Tanya's raising the Toblerone.
Is that a Toblerone in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? Okay. We're apologies for very immature jokes. Not really. Sorry, not sorry.
Because Meg accidentally shows her boobs part of the bingo card. And I just
Tanya
realized
with
I
the
said
prop
it.
humor.
Well, okay, we'll go there in a minute.
Like Carrot Top.
Yes, exactly. Hopefully better, but thank you for that. Less plastic surgery, I think, overall. Anyway, okay. I was going to say, like, absolutely. I think that I think saying you read fanfic for the plot is sort of like people saying they read Penthouse for the articles, but but it's true. And the thing is, the sexy times are something, if it fits the story and it helps drive the story, I'm okay with that. And as long as it's done well and like respectfully, I'm good. And so I wanted to say, like, I agree with what Erin was saying about the stereotypes around, oh, it's just porn. And if you want to find that, you can. If you want to find some that involves junior mints, you can. If you want to read about hot tamales, or some dots being used in.
I love that your area of your desk right now is just like an 8-year-old's dream. Like you just have boxes of candy, and I'm just like,
Tanya, would you be cool with me visiting?
Like I have a pride lizard my daughter painted for me.
Oh, that's cool.
So
I don't have. It's not edible. It's
I'm
not
just
nearly
a turtle.
Yay!
It's a green screen.
Well, hey, you said we were
why.
going to be on video live streaming, and I came prepared. Buttercups.
You're so cute.
Thank you. No, I was giving my wonderful husband some crap about bring me chocolate because they ran errands and I did taxes stuff this morning, and he brought me all of this candy. So bless him. That's a good husband. Get yourself one of those. Yeah. I did have a point in there somewhere and I think I lost it, but that's okay. This plot, that was it. This fic is how many words? It's not just a novel. It's a couple of novels. It's something like 4, and it's about
500,000 words. Yeah.
I was frustrated because I did the Goodreads reading challenge, and I read this probably at least twice last year. And I read a couple other ones that were very epic in scope and also very, very good. And I could not add them on Goodreads. So excuse me, we need people to add these on Goodreads so they can count in our reading challenge, because I definitely met it if you include this.
And Tanya Bailey wants to know, were those cashew butter cups?
This was, no, these are Justin's.
Peanut butter
Destiel peanut butter cup. No, I don't know.
Destiel peanut butter.
And these are
your peanut butter out of my Nutella.
You got your peanut butter in my chocolate.
So who's the peanut butter and who's the chocolate in the scenario?
Hey, they like to go back.
I think Cass is peanut butter. Dean is chocolate.
I mean, I don't normally read bottom Cass fics. So
yeah, same.
Sure.
That just seems
which came first?
Like
the chicken or no?
Oh
Yeah, so that said, you can probably, like, if you don't like that part of fic, you could probably like skip through it, and the plot and everything else is still amazing. I do think it's really important though, because it makes a lot of sense, like to me. And also I've found in reading fanfic, often the more explicit works are better written.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think with this one in particularly, I think it's kind of hard to say you should skip over, because I understand some people don't want to necessarily read the sex scenes. But what's so great about this is even those scenes put the plot forward. Like the emotional connections that they make, and how Cass's panic after every single one, and his terrible behavior after every single one. It's all really important and part of driving their story forward. Not necessarily the story of the war, but their story forward. And I think it's hard to get that without understanding what's going on in Cass's head during it, and then his absolute panic attacks afterward.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of Cass, let's get to that, how Cass is characterized in this fic. So Carla, what do you think about the way Cass is characterized.
I think he's written just so well. The fic really captures pretty much everything that you see of the show. Well, the better parts of it, because I think that the writers of the show constantly let Cass down. They're constantly under undermining his growth, and constantly just like they do with Dean. Like they write a character so well, and then they just go and blow it up for no good reason other than, hey, we can't think of anything better to do. But this is where fanfic really does take over and forward a story far better than the actual writers do sometimes. And in this fic, all of the classic Cass things are there. The initial rigidity, and his the fact that he's pretty much made for this role, but he still kind of pushes back and says, well, no, I think that we can do this differently. We can do this better. He's a different military officer than his fellow officers. He treats his people as people, unlike some of the other officers who treat them poorly and who don't really understand that, hey, they might have an off day, or hey, they might need to screw around a bit. And then at the same time, like, he's also more rigid than like a lot of other people, but in different ways. So it's all of these things that we love about Cass, because he is so quirky in his own ways, where you can't really pin him down as being just stuck up and rigid. You can't pin him down as just being a loose cannon and a screw up. And he is, like, in many ways more human on the show as an angel. He's in some ways more human than a lot of the human characters that they have. And you also have the fact that because this fic is set in the 1940s and in a wartime, and among war people, he's very closeted. He's very scared of having his secret discovered, and he really tries to be one of the dudes. Like they're watching the movie projections, and he's trying to pay attention to the girl on the screen, and all he really wants to do is stare at Dean. Like that's, I mean, honestly,
honestly,
we all can agree with that
one. The most unrealistic part about this whole fic is that not everyone is wanting to fuck Dean,
right?
That we know of.
Right. Yeah, that's true. We're only in one brain for most
right,
of the fic.
right. But yeah, and so he has like a lot of internal stuff that he's fighting with. And it's true also for Cass on the show. Like, he's constantly at odds with how he was trained, how he was brought up, so to speak. So, and there are, the way that he starts to kind of not crumble, but like his walls start to come down for Dean, and only for Dean, is, oh my gosh, Meg, the lascivious wink.
I was winking at Bailey, not you.
Oh wow! So now you're winking at other people. Unbelievable. But just like in the show, Dean breaks down Cass's walls and makes him start questioning a lot of things about, like, why am I doing it this way? Like, why am I approaching things like this? Those parallels to what happens on the show are there, and I think that it's absolutely masterful that this writer wrote their own story with elements of this show. And yes, well, you can see like the bare bones structure of the show in it. They built, a whole city around it, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. It is an absolute feat of just talent and creativity and insight to get into these characters who are so beloved, and to really honor them so well, and to also bring them to realizations and to let them be open in a way that they're not allowed to be, canonically on the show. And again, go back to the fact that the writer was 15 when they started. And, that's just, it makes it all more impressive, because it really shows that you can't put an age limit on insight. Because it's, you can have writers of any age, like 20, 30, 40, 50 years older than that, who will never bring a character to life like Komodo Bits brings these two. But with Cass in particular, I like that the focus was on Cass, not just because I'm a Cass girl, I promise, but also because for this particular story, his was the more interesting POV, because in a way he does lose the most. He loses his best friend Anais. He loses, he doesn't really have anybody to come home to. He doesn't have anything really. And Dean is, okay, I'll get to Dean later, but I just get very excited when I think about the writing in this, and how, yes, I do a little song and dance inside my head, Meg. You know how I do. But I get very excited thinking about how, because Cass is so closed up and you don't get any insight into him unless you are inside his head, that makes it more interesting for a story like this. Whereas I think with Dean, he's pretty much putting his heart out there at like every turn. So it's like, okay, well, we know that. But with Cass, everything's going on inside his head, and I'm just like so in love with it.
And before I get to you, Judy, just want to say really quickly that Bailey said, and this is back to Cass in the sex scenes, that Cass's thought process for every single action in every one of those scenes shows his character so much. And I do agree with that. And then really quickly, another thing from Bailey is, I think adding Dean's point of view with the letters sprinkled throughout the fic at the end lends to the fact that Cass's point of view is the one which should have been told first. So yeah. Okay. And then Judy, what are your thoughts on Cass in this?
Well, I too am a Cass girl. So whenever you're reading an AU of Cass, they always have to change his personality a bit, right? Because Cass in canon, he's a bazillion-year-old celestial being, superpowers, who's, just arrived on Earth for the first time in God knows how long. And so he's total fish out of water. So, in an AU, he's born a human. He's grown up as humans. He's lived a life. So you have to change his personality some. So you're never going to get 100% supernatural Cass in an AU fic. But I think that Komodo Bits did a great job with him. So like in the first half of the fic, he's old Cass, but he's so frustrating. But you understand what he's going through. Like, he's living in a time when it's not only illegal to be gay, you can be killed. You can have your life ruined, your career ruined, and especially caught falling for a subordinate. Like, that's really, really bad. On top of that, he has the weight of the world on his shoulders, this immense responsibility to try to keep 300 men alive in just the most insane circumstances. And the guilt and the torture of having to push these men into a war zone and complete the mission when he just knows every single time they're not all coming back and he's going to lose them. And every single one of them is just more guilt on his soul and more guilt on his soul. And that reminds me of Supernatural Cass, after how guilty he feels about what happened with heaven and what he did with the angels and just the weight that he carries around. So I love the way that she brought that just sense of the weight of the world that Cass carries onto his shoulders. That was just beautifully done. And in order to do the job that Cass is tasked to doing, you know, that like I said, sending these soldiers into war, the army actually teaches you and forces you, and you have to just like keep it all inside. You know, as we kind of touched on a little bit before, like that whole, you don't talk about it. You have to keep it internal. You're not allowed to express those feelings or weaknesses, especially in a leadership position. You don't have the luxury of breakdowns or anything like that. Not when you have all these men's lives at stake and counting on you. So I think it's gotten a little bit better, you know, in the military nowadays, but boy, it was, I imagine it was just so difficult back then. And I believe that both our canon Cass and the 91 Whiskey Cass both experienced PTSD from lots of different wars that they have fought in, and that they never admitted to it or did anything about it to address it, and it just weighed on them. And that we get Cass's point of view in this, I love, because we don't really get that so much in canon Supernatural, but we get so much we get to see his internal battles and what he's going through and how he's dealing with it all. And oh gosh, just poor Cass. And he spends so much time just being consumed by his fear of war and his fear of relationship and the guilt of what's going on with all of his men. Yeah, I don't know. It's just an amazing parallel. I love that. The one thing that I do kind of think that's a little bit different is like our canon Cass is just this kind of fearless. He's always going to jump into the fire and be the first one to face it. And maybe that's because we never really get his point of view in the show like we do in here. But the 91 Whiskey Cass is just consumed with fear. But I guess he jumps into the fire too, right? Even though he's consumed with the fear, he jumps right into the fire and faces it. So yeah, I love Cass so much. And really the only thing that seems to, that our Cass in both situations seems to really fear is losing Dean. Aw.
And Meg, what do you think about?
Yeah. Oh, I have stuff I want to say because of what Carla and Judy said too. So I honestly, one of the things I found interesting about this fic, and which I made me a little bit hesitant, is Cass is a giant asshole throughout almost all of this fic. Like, let's not be real. We understand his point of view. We know he's this poor repressed gay boy in the army during war in the 40s. But there are some things he does that are unforgivable. Sending Dean on a suicide run because he's pissed Dean slept with somebody else when he's being his normal, like, yeah, I want to fuck you, but sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I know. I was doing so well an hour in. He's like, yeah, I want to sleep with you, but also I want to push you away constantly and berate you and make you feel terrible about this. And so Dean is like, eventually I'm not going to keep coming back. And he doesn't. He goes and finds comfort in somebody else because, frankly, Dean deserves so much better in this fic than what he gets from most of this fic. And that's actually one of the things I kind of love about this being mostly from Cass's point of view, because it allows Dean to not be the self-hating, repressed, internalized, homophobic asshole that he is unfairly portrayed in a lot of other fics. He's much more accepting of himself and laid back and very much like, I could die tomorrow. Why am I going to sit here and worry about every other tiny little thing? Whereas Cass is very much hyper focused and hyper terrified of everything that's going on. So that's kind of my initial Cass little things. And that's why I kind of like that it's from Cass's point of view. And not even necessarily that I think Cass's point of view is necessarily more interesting. I think in the last chapters, when we see these little notes that Dean had been written and discarding, his point of view is just as important. And to watch his journey in those little snippets between that and the letters is just so beautiful. because this is man who's just falling and falling and falling. And why he's falling for someone who treats him as terribly as Cass admittedly treats him for a lot of this fic, is baffling and heartbreaking and beautiful in all sorts of ways. That being said, too much heart has always been Castiel's problem. And he cares and loves so much, no matter how much he tries to fight it. And it's such a good parallel for the show from the fic. He really fights caring about people and caring about humanity and caring about the people underneath him. And it's always a losing battle. And that's what informs so much of his panic and his trauma and his PTSD. He is a walking pile of shivering PTSD jello for a big chunk of this. And he's a fantastic leader, but he cannot see that in himself. And that's very similar to the Castiel from the show, who was a great tactician and strategist, but could never actually see that in himself. I thought that was fantastic. And I was and Judy, what you were saying about him, like different from Cass, is like Cass is in the mud in the show and everything like that. In the fic, he actually gets talked to by his superiors because they're like, you're the company commander. You're supposed to be in the back in safety, pushing all of your men forward. And you're not supposed to be running around on the front line shooting with them. So like even in the fic, and I thought that was so wonderful because it's the same as in the show, like he's not supposed to be getting involved. He's not supposed to be on the front lines.
With the mud monkeys.
Yeah, exactly. He's not supposed to be doing that. And he just cannot help himself. He doesn't feel right if he's not with his people and with his men. And I feel like that's so much of his redeeming qualities, because without that, without knowing his heart, without having that internal monologue that we hear from him, he could come across as a complete monster in this particular fic, as well as honestly in the show.
Oh yeah, I didn't blame Dean at all when he kicked him in the knee. I wanted to punch him for half of this fic. I mean, as much as I love him, but like, come on.
I was so mad when Dean kicked him in the knee. And I was like, just because.
Not the knees.
He needs to run. He needs to run. Also, hi, Jesse. Sorry.
Yes, I just want to. Just because. Hi, Jesse. We love Jesse. We absolutely love Jesse.
Hey,
hi.
Jesse.
Oh, I miss seeing your face, Jesse.
Disney show theme song. All right. Anyway.
Awesome. Okay, and then Tanya, your thoughts on how Cass is written.
It feels like a party every day. Hey, Jesse. All right. If you had a bingo square for Tanya bursts into song spontaneously, there you go. If you did not, add one. Okay.
I don't have any Meg specific bingo squares, and I'm very sad.
I'm just making up a game for myself. LOL. All right. So I agree. I actually, I'm a little more empathetic to Cass in this, because I can kind of see where he's coming from. This guy is very threatening to him, as much as, yeah, okay, he's gorgeous and he's just trying to help.
Oh, no,
really.
I get it.
But it's, yeah. And what Judy said about, it is interesting to consider how AU maintains being in character, and this does it. And of course, Cass is different. He's human. He swears, which is always a little bit of my marker for if Cass is in character or not. But I think it's really well done, because I've always read both canon and this Castiel as having some OCD, having some anxiety, and having self-esteem issues. And as a person who also has that wonderful plethora of stuff, I feel like it's understandable that his self-esteem issues would also be a reason he pushes Dean away, because he doesn't want to acknowledge he has needs and should be treated like a person. There's so much responsibility on him for taking care of the people in his troop. I forget, squadron. I forget what the correct word is. Company. Thank you. There's so much responsibility there. He doesn't feel like he deserves to have someone take care of him, which even through the sex is what Dean is doing. And I think that is really interesting, because at some point you get to, Cass will allow that, and that's it. And it's like this weird compromise he tries to make with himself because he's also terrified. So you could kind of also hashtag this Cass's self-esteem issues and Dean's selflessness issues crashing together in a way that has good and bad implications. Yeah. So,
I'm sorry. I just want to correct quickly, and I'm sorry that I'm correcting actual veterans, but the correct term is war buddies, war mates. Like war mates. I know that you guys might be rusty, and I'm so sorry to correct you, but that's the correct term, is war mates.
Good job, Carla. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you. And I would just want to point, like, I'm absolutely 100% empathetic to Cass, and I totally understand. Like, that's what I'm saying. His internal voice is so crucial to this fic, more so than Dean's. It's wonderful to see Dean's, but if you don't know how Cass is feeling, if you don't have that internal voice of his talking about his terror and his and like, how is this super sexy man and he's so arrogant and he thinks he's so special and he wants to do all of this stuff and I don't understand and he is so awesome and wonderful and I just want to love him forever. And he's like this super repressed gay boy. I get it. And I am super empathetic to it. I realized I was kind of harsh on Cass when I was talking about it, but I love him so much. Like, there's a reason I read this over and over again.
No, but it's true, because you know what? You can be a wonderful, fabulous character. As you know, Erin and I have discussed many times about Brian Kinney on Queer as Folk.
Are you really going to bring that rubbing the salt?
Oh, yes, I am.
Actually,
I
already
have Queer as Folk bingo card.
No, but with Cass, because in this fic, it's his point of view, and everything is coming from his anxieties, and it's very clearly spelled out for you. And also because he's generally kind to people, but so there are so many things that soften those really sharp edges. Even if you didn't have that POV, and I think that's what draws Dean to him, is that he can tell that this guy is scared stiff. You know, he goes from just
he's scared stiff.
Oh my god! You know, I was like, oh, maybe she won't catch that one, and yet. But yeah, so he's terrified, and that's clear to Dean, because Dean is a really good observer of people. And that's true in the show, and it's true here. He knows that that Cass is terrified. Like, he can spot that a mile out. And so he knows that there's like a different intent behind everything. But yeah. So more when the Dean portion of the
And I know Tanya and Judy both have stuff to add. So
yeah, I one thing I wanted to add about Cass, it's amazing that Komodowitz was almost prophetic, in that, just like in canon Supernatural, which happened years after this fic, like, Cass was not able to experience happiness, to let himself have any happiness, until he finally said what he was feeling to Dean. And that's what we ended up getting in canon. And I love it. Like, how prophetic. Of course, at least in this fic, he was rewarded for it and not sent to super hell and never thought of again. Yes, I'm still better.
Yes. Damn it. Thank you.
So thank you, Komodowitz. Great job.
I actually just wanted to add that I think that one thing about Cass in the show, and characters like Cass, is trying to show that they are a part of and apart from at the same time. And I really feel like this fic did a good job of that with his role. He can't, as a commanding officer, he can never, part of why he's being aloof and kind of a jerk is he needs to do that to maintain at least a facsimile or a semblance of order, and that he needs to maintain respect. And I think it's sort of like why you can't ultimately be friends with your boss, like, or or your doctor. Like, there's a conflict of interest there, and so I think they do a good job of showing that apart from. And to answer Jesse's question, I think, frankly, that they're both pretty hot tamales.
Oh
Yeah, I
my
was gonna
God.
ask the whole I was
Oh
gonna
my
ask the
God,
whole
Tanya.
panel because Jesse wants to know who you think is hotter, Dean or Cass. I think Dean by 1,000 billion times, but that's just me.
Aaron's just like, I'm a Dean girl in a sea of Cass girls right now. I gotta stand up for my man.
I mean, no, I will. I'm a Cass girl, but I will admit that Dean is the absolute perfect specimen. Like
He's stupid. He's stupid hot.
I mean, no wonder
not
Cass
even
fell in for him. Yeah.
It's Cass is like he's like human and approachable hot. Dean is just like
and he's hotter because of his personality. Like I
Right.
love him more and more
Yeah.
because of who he is.
And as he ages, he just keeps getting more attractive, and
Oh,
I
I
find
don't know.
that really unfair.
that Cass that burst through those barn doors was about as hot as Dean. I mean, there's like not
I'm
much.
saying
hotter.
Dean keeps getting hotter.
Oh,
and
Dean
hotter
gets
as he
right?
ages.
What is going on
Cass
there?
doesn't age.
True.
And really quickly, thank you, Nora, for watching. You just said Chester Run, so thank you so much.
Hi, Nora. Thank you.
Hi, Nora.
I will just add with the way Cass is portrayed in here. And yes, Dean, thank you, Nora, for agreeing with taking the right side in this argument.
Who's arguing? We all
I
are
said
like, yeah,
both.
Dean's
Both
really
are good.
hot.
Both.
Aaron's just like, I just want to fight. No.
I with the way Cass is portrayed, one thing that always bugs me in the fandom is when people romanticize things like in Point of No Return, when Cass literally almost kills Dean, who is completely suicidal. I can't watch that episode because I want to punch everybody except for Dean in that episode, because I think everybody is absolutely horrible to Dean in that episode. And a lot of people romanticize that alley scene, and there is a scene in this fic that is reminiscent of that scene. And one thing I did appreciate is the fact that it didn't feel romanticized to me. It actually felt like showing this is really messed up and this is not okay. And I really appreciated that. And I think a lot of times in fanfic, Destiel fanfic, Cass is painted as this, pardon the pun, angelic being who has no faults, and he's so much better than everybody else. And I really appreciated that wasn't the case in this fic, because that irritates me to no end. And I'm not at all saying Dean is perfect, because I know Dean's not perfect. But when you have one person that's painted really perfectly and then the other one isn't, it's not as interesting to read, I don't think. So that's one thing I really, really appreciated.
I think this fic almost goes the opposite way. Like Dean is almost too much. And we'll get into Dean in just a minute, but like almost too perfect. And maybe because it's from Cass's point of view and he just, rosy glasses. But I think Dean's a little too perfect in this one.
Okay, well,
I don't think that's possible.
All right, let's talk about Dean.
Let's get into Dean. So, Carla, what do you think about the way Dean is in this fic?
Let's get into Dean. That's what Cass said.
Not this fic.
Okay. Dean, the way that it is from Cass's point of view. So he goes from seeing this guy as completely obnoxious, super duper hot, but completely obnoxious, undermining his authority at every turn, to seeing this guy as just a really kind, giving, loving person who wants to take care of people. All of those things are true. All of those things are accurate. But the degree to which we see that changes as the story goes on, because we're seeing it through Castiel's eyes. So yeah, you could argue definitely, and I definitely felt that the first time that I read it, which was so long ago, I can't even remember. It was so many times ago. I was like, oh, I was but a wee lass. Okay, so the first time that I read it, I was like, yeah, Dean seems a little bit too good to be true. And then, after the next few times, it just really strikes me that Cass's point of view for the first the first half really of the fic is, why won't this guy just shut the hell up? If you could just stop it, my life would be so much easier. Can we have somebody equally competent, hopefully equally hot, but maybe less mouthy? And he falls in love with Dean, not I wouldn't say in spite of these things, but because he comes to understand where this is coming from, and that this is Dean's personality, but it's also part of a personality that seeks to soothe nerves and seeks to make other people more comfortable. And it's not just part of why he's a medic, but it's just part of how he operates. um, the biggest contribution that Dean ends up making is in bringing this levity to the company, and bringing this lightheartedness and kind of humanizing cast to his men, because then they come to love and trust him even more than they did before, and they loved him plenty just before all of this happened, and they trusted him very much. But that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the way that Dean is written, is that you're getting this amazing world building and this point of view that is it's just so solid and concrete. It feels so real. It feels like you can actually see everything that is happening, and you can see the contours of Dean's face, the way that they're lit up from a cigarette, the way that when Dean is trying to hide the head wound under his helmet, like you flinch because it feels so real. And the fact that you can capture all of this through one point of view, it's just pure magic. And all of these characteristics that we have, the reasons that we love Dean on the show, he works super hard. He puts so much on himself, and we want so much better for him. We want things to be easier for him, and we want him to have love and to be cherished the way that he deserves to be cherished, and to be told, you matter, you're valuable outside of your skills, you know and even though we're deprived of this until the end, because as we see through Dean's letters, he's like, what is this guy not getting? Why is it that, why am I in love with somebody who treats me like this? Like, what is wrong with me that I'm so attached to this man who is, so awful? And then, well, yeah, but also all of these things that you would have in your mind if you're trying to understand your feelings about somebody who is more complicated than you really bargained for. And then realizing, well, damn it, I hate this. I'm in love with him. I hate it. I hate it. I love him. It's and all of that becomes clear when you see those letters, but all of that is still kind of peeping through Cass's point of view. So you're getting it's kind of like with the supernatural show, it's pretty much through Dean's point of view, and this is strictly through Cass's. So it's that is where you have like that those jagged edges meeting. Um, and I think that if you hadn't watched the show and you read the fic, you still end up coming out with the whole picture because of those letters at the end. And I think, I just I can't imagine what a wonderful experience it must be to not have seen the show and to just read the fic, and to be just like, wow, this is a whole story. This is like a perfect circle of of love and caring and frustration and anger and grief, because there's so much grief in this story. Part of the reason that we joke about having a support group, because it's there's so many sad things, but really you do leave the story kind of grieving it, and grieving the loss of these characters, because all you want to do is hold their hands and make things be okay for them. You don't want them to suffer anymore. They've been through so much, and all you want is their happiness. And it's a great gift that Komodo Bits has given us, to give us a story that makes us feel this vividly and this passionately about just characters. Because there are many fanfics that I love, many of them that I have deep feelings for, but none that I feel as intensely as 91 Whiskey. I mean, this is really the fic that that told me, you know what, you don't have to settle for lesser fics, because like I would read just about anything before, and like Meg said, this completely ruined me for for lesser fics. It's you know, there's something like this that's so amazing, and this is just one of so many. And this is part of why I'm constantly pushing people to read it, because whether or not you're sold on the show, this story stands on its own 2 feet. And you don't need anything else to help you feel these things for these characters.
Yeah. Judy.
Yeah, so Dean's character, I mean, obviously we touched on, he's written just almost too perfect. Like, he's just so wonderful. Caretaker Dean is definitely a canon thing. I mean, Dean always is taking care of Sam and Cass and everybody else. So that's definitely a canon callback. And one of the things that I love about both Supernatural Dean and 91 Whiskey Dean, and like canon Dean, he covers his fear with self-hatred, or he covers his fear and his self-hatred with jokes and with giving everything that he has to everybody else, and not taking care of himself. I think that's one of the common things about Dean. He just gives and gives, and rarely looks internal and takes care of himself. Like I mentioned, I think because it's told from Cass's point of view, and Cass just absolutely idolizes Dean, maybe that's why he's just almost too good, too patient, too perfect, too funny, too adorable. I mean, I love him. I love the way he's characterized, but I think, that he's just, we don't get to see hardly any flaws in him. Like, this Dean is very patient with Cass, and he's understanding that Cass has the weight of the world on his shoulders. But in canon, we often see Dean, he's short with people, especially Cass, and oftentimes Sam too. I mean, I ship Destiel hard, but there have been so many times in the show, in canon, where Dean has treated Cass just horribly, cruelly, and I was so furious that I wanted Cass to just go find somebody who would actually love and value him other than Dean. Even though Dean loves him, he just won't. He's just been cruel in several times. So I felt like that was a little bit out of character, and again, maybe it was just because Cass kind of idolizes him. And there's times when I felt like their roles were a bit reversed from like canon Supernatural, where Cass is just with their sexuality. Cass is, he's utterly indifferent to sexual orientation, and he is canonically in love with Dean, and he's even the one who's able to admit it out loud, where Dean is the one who's kind of overcompensates all the time, denies himself any kind of attraction to men, and Cass in particular. So almost that piece of them kind of feels reversed. And in 91 Whiskey, they have this conversation where Dean he's like okay with their relationship and wants to try to figure out a way to make it work, and wants Cass to be his future. And Cass is the one who's, consumed by his fear of his own queerness and what could happen, where, the opposite is actually the case, where in Supernatural, Cass figures it out and overcomes his fear, and tells Dean that he's in love with him, where, Dean never does let himself reciprocate. So I don't know. I think that piece was kind of the opposite. And as far as Dean's characterization, I mean, I loved him, loved the way he was characterized, but it definitely felt a little bit too idealized compared to what Dean really is in canon.
And I just want to point out a couple of quick things that Bailey has said in the comments, kind of going into what everyone has said so far, is going back to the he said, she said, showing how both point of views can be skewed. So you might have both of those. Yeah. And then also Bailey said, I think the interesting thing about in character AUs is to see how much the environment affects their relationship. Yeah. So I think that's true too. Yeah. And then Meg.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna disagree with Judy a little bit about Cass idolizing Dean. Cass is very reluctant to be falling in love with this boy. He is so reluctant to have these feelings. That's part of why Cass is kind of a giant dick to Dean in a lot of ways. And he's projecting all of his own pain, all of his insecurity onto Dean. So I don't feel like idolizing is the right thing. He's very resentful that this man is here, making him feel these things and making him lose his focus on his job, because all he wants to do is kiss this boy, not just sleep with this boy, because there's a difference. There's a difference. And he even talks about it. He's like, well, it's one thing to want to sleep with boys. It's something entirely different to want to kiss a boy. And I think he's actually really, really resentful of falling in love with Dean. That being said, this might be my favorite iteration of Dean in anything. Because, and I think it's because he gets to be soft. Dean is a caretaker. Having Dean be a medic is the most like obvious choice. I couldn't picture, and I think it's so interesting with some people who just watch the show and they come on and see Dean, like, well, of course, Dean would be like the best soldier in the world and he'd be shooting everybody and killing everyone. And that's not who Dean is. That's not who he is. Dean is the one taking care of everybody else to his own detriment. And we see that time and time and time again on the show. And it's so easy to put all of his poor choices and poor behavior or the way he hurts other people inadvertently as him being careless or anything like that. But he is the opposite. Dean cares so much about everyone, about the whole world, to his own detriment. And I think we see a lot of this in this fic. Like I can't remember which battle it was, but afterwards it was a really bad one. And he like just goes off into the woods and sits by himself, and he's just shaking, and he doesn't want anyone to worry about him because it's his job to take care of everybody else. And he doesn't like Cass taking care of him because it's his job to take care of Cass. And he's relentless in his job to take care of people. That's why he tells all those dumb jokes. That's why he keeps playing the like elbow, yuck, trying to keep the morale up. And he does it to his own detriment. And that's so much like the core character of who Dean is on the show that gets buried underneath all of the performative masculinity and machismo that he has to put out there. And I think it was actually beautiful to see in this story. He's very obviously a man's man. He's very obviously like a tough guy. He's well-liked. He's popular. But he gets to be soft. He gets to be that helper. He gets to be who he's meant to be in the show. Because in the show, he doesn't get to be that. He doesn't get to do that. He always has to, he's always under his dad's thumb. And I think what's kind of, and performing to try and take care of his brother. And I think it's so interesting in this fic. Sam is not in 99% of this fan fiction. Sam is there as letters to Sam is how we get most of Dean's insight, and kind of seeing how Dean tries to edit and take care of Sam, and while talking about all of the stuff that's going on, will we see what he's really going through? I think it's just so well done, and it gives us a lot of insight as into who Dean is based on his letters and then based on Cass's point of view. Because like I said, I don't see Dean as being almost too perfect. I think Dean has issues in this fic too. Continuing to come back to someone who hurts you relentlessly, even when you're like, well, I'm not always going to come back, and then coming right back like immediately shows how little Dean actually sees himself as worthy. downplaying the fact that he's a medic because he's not a real soldier is something that kind of breaks my heart. We still see that lack of self-esteem in Dean. We still see that self-hatred in him. But what I think is so refreshing is his self-hatred has nothing to do with his sexuality. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's in love with this man. He goes into this war thinking, hey, you know, maybe I can get it out of my system. You know, maybe I can sleep with a few boys, get that taken care of, go home and marry a nice girl, and things will be quote unquote normal for me. He never counts on Cass, just like Cass never counts on him as a, not like they depend on each other and trust each other, obviously, but they never count on having that experience. They don't count on falling in love in the middle of a war zone. And I think that's great. Let me just see if I have anything else. Oh, I just want to say the hair cutting scene is like maybe one of the softest and most adorable scenes. And then when Dean is like, oh my God, were you getting hot and bothered by me cutting your hair? And Cass is like, do I tell him this or do I tell him this was too domestic and I'm too in love with you and this is too perfect? And he's like, yep. I was getting super hot and bothered by a haircut.
So I totally agree. I mean, I love his characterization, and I love the soft Dean. I just felt like it was slightly out of character because we don't get a whole lot of soft Dean. Dean can be mean and cruel and hard.
But I don't think it's out of character for Dean's core.
That's
Dean can
true.
be Dean in the show.
Who Dean should be and really is in his heart is soft Dean. Yeah.
Right. But we're not even like, we're not talking about show Dean so much. Yeah. But when we're talking about comparing, if we're comparing the two, who Dean is at his core in this fic and that television show are exactly the same person. He's just not tied in the same ways as he is in the show. He doesn't have his dad's voice so much in his head constantly. Like part of the reason he was quote unquote excited to go to war was this is something he chose. This was his pick. His dad didn't want him to do it. He chose to go and become a medic, not just become an infantryman like his dad thought he was going to do, or a grunt. So he doesn't have all of that concern. So many people are worried about their own shit in the show or in the war. They're not paying very much attention to Dean. So Dean doesn't have to be so macho, and he doesn't have to perform so much. So I feel like if you take Dean out of the context of Supernatural, this is very, very in character of Dean. Dean is cruel in the show from time to time because he doesn't have much of a choice, but everybody in that show is cruel.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cass is a monster sometimes.
Absolutely. Yep.
But anyway, that's my Dean love just attacking.
Yeah, just wait until you get to me. Everyone's gonna want to leave once you get to me.
Wait, you like Dean?
My love of Dean.
You like Dean?
Overwhelming. I do want to, because I think this is interesting that you bring this up, Bailey, because I've been meaning to bring up the fact that this fic, while we were talking about it, reminded me of Brokeback Mountain all of a sudden. And Bailey says at one point in the letters, I do see a bit of Brokeback, which is why it's so important to not only see people who are like us in media, but also in a positive light in real life. And you know, it was so funny because when I was listening to everybody talk, and then I'll get to you, Tanya, just a second. It reminded me so much of, you know, we started off Pride talking about Brokeback Mountain and talking about Moonlight. And both of those are very similar stories in a lot of ways, where you have one character that is a lot more boisterous and out there. And then you have one character that is really internal and withdrawn. And so you have a lot of pain in those. And it's interesting to also have this, where all of these stories are set in different time periods, because you've got this in World War II, you've got Brokeback in the 60s, and then you've got Moonlight in more present day. So it goes to show you that this is a struggle that sadly is still around, and it just keeps lasting and lasting and lasting, and goes on, and there's different iterations of it. But it's kind of heartbreaking to me that you still see that, and that's why it's still important to show these stories, but it's also important to have stories that also show some hope and some positivity, and that it's not just all about tragedy, where it doesn't show that anyone in the LGBTQIA plus community, that their whole life is going to be tragedy. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because I've been thinking about that the whole time we've been talking about that, is the similarities. So yeah. And Tanya, what are your thoughts about Dean in this one?
I think Meg is like chomping at the bit to say something real quick. Meg?
No, I just want to say, it reminded me of that little part where, I'm sorry, I'm just going to go on, where because Dean talks about, he's like, there's so much to be scared of, because Cass is asking him, he's like, aren't you scared of this? Like, meaning the two of them. And he's like, there's so much to be scared of. I couldn't handle being scared of this. And I just wanted to throw that out there as one of my favorite Dean lines. That doesn't include a swear word.
Yeah, that's great. No, I love that. So I think everyone has covered it really well, but I will add that I think it's interesting that the themes you mentioned keep coming up in these. I haven't seen Moonlight. In
Watch
some
it
of these,
now.
okay, yes, it's going on the list. Okay,
Log off.
Okay, I have a lot of candy, so I'll be good for anyway. Yeah, but it's the reason that keeps coming up, I think, is we live in a society that is patriarchal, that is heteronormative, that is cisgender, that is characterized by white supremacy. So even folks who identify in these marginalized groups are going to have internalized prejudice, internalized oppression toward themselves, toward other groups. So we see that in some of Cass's reactions to Dean's overall acceptance of his identity, like his bit about not really questioning. He likes both men and women, right? And he doesn't feel shame or feel that that's wrong. And they explore that a bit, and that's to some extent due to Cass's religious influence as well in the fic. And I think that that's very reflective that people who are gay can have bi phobia and discrimination, because at one point, and I don't know that Cass is even discriminating against Dean, but at one point he's like, why would you want me when you can be normal, right? When you can continue to pass as a straight person or in a straight relationship. And I thought that was an interesting way to bring up both the concept of internalized oppression and the concept of some marginalization within identity communities. So I would add that I think this entire fic, it's like a meditation. The Dean character, as Judy and others and Meg have referenced, and Carla I think as well, it's like a meditation on who Dean would be without John, without John's like overbearing, personality, or if he were truly able to have agency to choose what he would do, he'd focus on the saving people part of saving people, hunting things. Like maybe that's a way to view this. And I had one more thought there, and it went out of my head. Oh, who Dean is? I kept thinking you were saying Houdini. Like Houdini is, he's Houdini. He's there, he's not there, he's in there, he's out there, he's magic. Wow. All right, anyway, that was probably my stupid joke. Houdini is Houdini's.
New phone, Houdini's.
All right.
We're doing all these corny jokes in Dean's honor.
That's right.
Totally.
It's
I
intentional.
feel that energy. Yes.
It's intentional. And I really appreciate your comment there about the religious trauma, because it that is tough. Like it's some of this you have to kind of caution people. It's not I don't want to say this is like a sad gays World War II story, because like that's not the point. That I think that was my other smart point. I got there. See, if I just talked long enough, I'll come back to it.
That's what Carla and I do, except we never find the point.
The point was their identities matter because it enables the relationship, and it's important, but it is absolutely not the only important thing about them. They continue to have a relationship, spoiler alert, I guess, but they have to deal with their trauma, they have to deal with their crap, and they both continue to have other people in their lives, and well, Cass less so, but they are fully formed individuals where their sexual identification is a part of them and their relationship is a part of them, but it's not the only thing about them. So it's real in that way.
Yeah, okay. Get ready for an outpouring of love for the way Dean is in this fic, because As everybody knows who's listened to more than like 5 episodes of this podcast, Dean
5
Winchester.
minutes.
Yeah. Dean Winchester is the most important character ever in my life, ever. Fictional character, means more to me than any other character. I relate to him more than any other fictional character. And I'm very, very defensive of him, which I know sometimes can be in the wrong, but I can't help it. And watching him on the show and reading him in fic and writing him in fic has been a very therapeutic and emotional journey for me. And that's why I have so many issues with this show after mid-season 11, because of the way they treated Dean was very heartbreaking to me and pissed me off. And I'm not talking about the sexuality thing, because I actually don't think that's what Dean's problem is in the show. I think what Dean's problem is always, and there's a bit of that in this fic too, is, and I know you touched on it, Meg, is Dean does not believe he deserves to be loved. Dean feels what his only sole purpose is on this earth is to, sorry, I'm gonna start crying, is to take care of others and to provide that for others, because he's not worthy of that, and he's not worth that. What he's worthy of,
And he's never had that.
and he's
never had that.
what was that? I'm sorry, that my thing froze when you said whatever you said.
Yeah, nobody takes care of Dean.
Yeah, nobody takes care of Dean because
that's what I was saying. Yeah, sorry. I was like unmute and then and then mute and talk. I was saying he never had that. No one's ever taken care of him like that. So he wants to give that to other people.
Yeah, and he doesn't think he deserves it anyway. And what I really appreciated in this is what I find in other fics is people like to characterize Dean as not feeling and that he's not an emotional person. And he's the most emotional character on the show. He has more emotions than anyone, and he feels deeply. And even if he doesn't say it, it's not that he's emotionally repressed. It's that he doesn't think his feelings matter, and he doesn't think anybody will give a crap. And so if he says them, he will lose everybody in his life. And his job is to be a good soldier, be a good medic, be a good brother, be a good surrogate father, be a good friend, be a good lover, that's his job, is to take care of you. And the way you really see it in this, like Meg mentioned, is he keeps going back to this person who is, for all intents and purposes, is rather abusive to him and is rather cruel to him. But in Dean's mind, that's better than nothing. And that's really what he deserves in his mind. And to see that written in a fic and not to have it be like Dean has this internalized homophobia, which I actually don't think Dean has that anyway, but to see that is just so refreshing. I think what Dean's internalized phobia is about, not necessarily homophobia. I think it's this internalized thing of, if I really allow myself to feel the way I want to feel, if I allow myself to open myself up to these feelings that I have and to who I really am, I am going to lose everything, because people won't want me to have that. And that's where I think a lot of that comes from in the show and in other things. And in fic, too often it's written as Dean is this bastard. Dean is this mean and cruel guy, and you don't want to get in his way. And I'm not saying he's never done mean and cruel things, because he has. But he has heart, so much heart. He has more heart than I think a lot of people give him credit for. And looks like we might have lost Judy. I'll check on that in a second here. But so I just really appreciate in this fic that Dean is handled with such love and care, and he's treated like he actually matters. And too often, I don't think he's treated that way. It's kind of like writers treat him the way that he thinks of himself. And it really it just breaks my heart when I read that. That's why, and that's one of the reasons I stopped shipping them. And that's why when reading this was so refreshing. I remember I told Carla that was one of my favorite things about this, because if you don't have that in it, I won't want to read your fic. I won't care as much, because it'll just make me angry, because it feels to me like you don't actually know the character to me. And it's always a thing I've struggled. And I know that I am a fan of Dean to a level where I probably excuse stuff of his that I shouldn't. But he just is such a beautiful human being who deserves so much more than he is given and so much more than he allows himself to give. And on the side of not having Sam in this, I don't like Sam. As people know, I'm not a Sam fan. I just am not a fan of his at all. And so whenever there's a fic that lacks a lot of Sam,
well, it's like I've said before,
shout out that.
the best fanfic Sam is a Sam that is not really in the fic. And in this way, 91 Whiskey really, really has my heart in that.
Okay, here's something that I really kind of love about that, though, is so Sam's not in it very often, but I love in our letters to Sam that we get from Dean. We never read any of Sam's letters to Dean, but I think it's such a brilliant writing tactic of moving Sam's life along forward and showing even that life is happening outside of the war. It's so beautiful when Dean is writing back that he is responding to stuff that Sam has told him in his own letters. And we get to see Sam's relationship with Jess grow and all of this kind of cute things. And I think they just do a really, really good job of it. And Aaron, I don't love Dean as much as you do because I feel like there's no one on the planet who loves Dean as much as you do. But it is one of those things where that's what I loved so much about how he was portrayed in this fic. And I think this is kind of why I love this fic so much.
Maybe there's someone in heaven who loves Dean as much as Aaron.
Yeah, the only person who loves Dean more than Aaron is Cass. It certainly isn't Dean.
No.
True that.
Yeah, but it is really heartbreaking. And I wrote in the comments because I'm trash and I'm commenting while other people are talking so I don't interrupt you guys. But it is, Dean is just, he's desperate for love in this fic and on the show. But in this fic, he loves him. He loves Cass so much. And I love how we see that he just doesn't understand why. And it shows so much his lack of self-worth that he keeps going back to someone who treats him terribly. For most of this fic, Cass really treats him awfully. He gives him all these mixed signals. And I love when Dean is like, if he's like, here's what you have to tell me. You have to talk to me. You have to tell me what you want. You have to say, I want this, but I want to pretend that I don't want it. So at least then I know where we stand. If you're going to pretend you don't want something and actually want it, that's fine. Just let me in on that game. Like let me be a part of what's going on in your head, because we hear a ton of what's going on in Cass's head and Dean never does. And it's just, I love Dean.
Yeah. I appreciated when Dean was, like when he was with a woman in this and Cass got upset about that. And Dean saying, well, at least this person isn't treating me like basically like I'm complete trash.
And then Cass's jealousy when he hears Dean not being quiet when he's with this woman and how that kind of just pours into like this poison in Cass's brain when it comes to Dean in this particular part, because this is right after Anais is killed. And Cass is like, after he was taken to heaven and brainwashed and punished and received revelation at the end of season 4 of the show, he's just like, when he is just like, what are we going to end? We weren't anything. There was never anything between us, and just completely shuts Dean out. That's the area where I'm just like, it's really hard to forgive this Cass. I can't believe Dean can, because I barely can.
I think that also speaks, and welcome back, Judy. I'm so glad we got you back. But I think that also speaks a lot to who Dean is. Dean forgives a lot. Dean forgives more than anyone really should forgive, honestly. A lot of times he's forgiven his father for a lot of things in the show that he shouldn't forgive his father for. He forgives other people for a lot of things that he shouldn't forgive them for. And so that's another reason that this characterization is so spot on. So yeah, he just breaks my little heart a lot. a lot. I love him so much and miss miss him, and especially in the earlier seasons when they seem to actually give a crap about him. So we did already talk a lot about their relationship and some of the switching viewpoints. So what I want to ask is, are there any other characters in this that you want to speak on at all, Carla?
Anais, Wallace, comma Anais. He's
Lieutenant Wallace.
he's, you know, for somebody who played like such a tiny role in the show, I really, and that's part of why I appreciate that they used him and not like Gabriel or Balthazar or somebody else. Like a lot of fics do, they'll use one of those characters to be Cass's, you know, either brother or cousin or a best friend or whatever. But I really appreciate that it's a character that we barely really get to know in the show, and the way that his role was fleshed out in the fic, I thought was beautiful. Like it really, Anais really gave Cass kind of something to live for, you know, until his relationship with Dean happened. Anais was his best friend, and like best friend in a really true, deep sense of the word. They've known each other forever. They've seen each other through everything. Anais knows everything about Cass, including his sexuality, and he, you know, there are ways that you can read this and say, well, he's still not, he doesn't stand up for him when people are making fun of, when people are, you know, gay shaming or whatever. But it's like, you know, it's almost like, how much could he really do when they're in the army and it's all a bunch of dudes, and this is the 1940s, and so there are like a lot of things that go in there. So I don't hold that
He also
against.
does a little bit though, not
He does a
necessarily
little
for
bit though, but
Cass
no,
when they're in that cafeteria and they're yeah, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I'm just saying he does a little.
He does, but I think that, you know, like if you read it from a modern point of view, you could think, oh my God, he could have done so much more. And it's like, he really couldn't have. Like, there's a very limited amount that he could have pushed back and not given away Cass's secret. So I think that he does a good job of balancing not only that, but also Cass's personality, because Anais really, he loves Cass. They have such a beautiful friendship and a beautiful relationship, and there's almost like a tug of war between him and Dean, because, you know, it's like, I think for Anais, it's like he never really expected somebody to come into Cass's life and take his place in some way. And here's Dean, and suddenly Dean has Cass's attention, and, you know, so there's like a bit of friction there that I felt was really realistic, because a lot of the times when you're young and you have this circle of friends that you've always had, and suddenly they start pairing up and moving on without you, you are kind of left kind of feeling bereft, like, you know, you're taking my best friend, like what's going to happen to me now? So, and especially because they're far away from home, we don't know what's going to happen to us, you know, like I was really counting on you know, on this time with my bestie. So and there was so much of that love between them that you could see in Cass's eyes as he's talking about Anais and all of that, which is why, I mean, his death was one of the hardest sections to get through in the fic, um, because not only because you come to care for Anais as a character, they really do a great job of building up a person that you can really kind of feel for, and you have, you know, you care about Anais. So it's not just that loss that you feel. You also feel this huge gap now in Cass's life, and he really at that point doesn't really have anybody to turn to and really let it all out, because that would have been Anais. And no matter how he may feel about Dean and Dean may feel about Cass, they don't have that, you know, 20 plus year history to fall back on. They don't have that easy um, uh, camaraderie and rapport. So it really, it just, I think that's one of those parts of the book, because honestly, it's a novel. It's, it's a piece of literature that just broke my heart. And I after Anais dies, I was like, I don't know that I can keep reading this. It just, it's a huge blow if you're reading it and you've become so attached to them. And because it's set in a war, you kind of expect that, people around these guys are going to die. And while we do get our two protagonists to the finish line, losing Anais does feel like a loss as a reader too.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm gonna jump in if it's all right. I agree. That character, I don't even remember that character in Supernatural. I know it's a reference, but it's such a well-developed character in the fic, and it's really interesting to have. He's basically Cass's family, or family surrogate at that point, and he knows, he can see that he's falling in love with Dean, and he gets to say that great line, "Oh, you're stuck on the Winchester kid." Just like you might want to find some fandom thing merch to stick on your.
Oh my God, you're amazing. This is amazing. I love how you made this.
That's pretty clever.
Poignant line.
Seamless.
This poignant, heartbreaking little line where Anais realizes he's no longer Cass's person, into an ad.
Yeah,
that was just
thank you.
Flawless.
I was going into marketing.
Hashtag boom.
It's
I don't know.
beautiful.
Yeah. No, I wrote that down like an hour ago.
That's awesome. Thank you. That was pretty incredible.
John takes notes on ads.
Yeah. I was like, how can I make a joke? No, because otherwise we'd just be crying. Like about I'm if you can't tell, I have that in common with somebody we've been talking about, Dean. I always get Sam when I take the quiz, but I really identify with different aspects of Dean. I think a lot of the reason a lot of women identified folks love Supernatural, of course, is, it's great. We love sci-fi and action too, and the leads are, okay to look at. I mean, they're not hard.
It's not a punishment.
Yeah, it's
They're
not
right.
terrible. But I think the other reason that we don't get as much credit for is we're not just, thirsty fan people, although there's that as well. It's that we identify with that, like Dean and even, the friendship. I know we're supposed to be talking about other characters, but like, I really feel like a lot of women can identify with Dean because he's put in this role to take care of people. And in this fic, we really see that, so much so that he's not taking care of himself. And then Cass, I had another thing going back to Dean, that Cass has to learn what Dean's love language is, and that he's sort of figuring that out the whole time. Yeah. And Anais's love language is, looking out for Cass as well, and like, hey babe, and calling him babe, and also checking on him when homophobic things do come up. Cass will be like, I can see Anais looking at me, but Anais is also trying to, I think, in a lot of ways, protect Cass, even though it's not always the most inclusive way or the way we'd want to be an ally today, right? He's like, you have to be careful, and also like trying to make sure Cass is not revealing emotions. So that's tough, but you understand that it's coming from that place of protection. For that impulse.
Well, and I like when he's talking about his like, hey babe and stuff. I like how it kind of feels like Anais is so overtly friendly with Cass and with other people, to kind of give Cass a little bit of a buffer to be like, it's okay to touch someone. Where Cass is so closed off. Cass is very much like, if I even make eye contact with a man, they're gonna know. They're gonna know that there's something wrong with me. In Cass's point of view, there's nothing wrong with him. And Anais so much is like there to break the tension, and he's that friend. It sounds like really kind of obnoxiously self-indulgent to say. He's like me in that I drag my friends like kicking and screaming into stuff.
I'm here to verify that.
Yes. Like I am the friend shy friends need, because I'll be like, yeah, we're absolutely going to be doing this and you're going to come with, and I'm going to make sure that you feel safe and comfortable in what we're doing. And Anais is very much that for Cass, because Cass is not only so repressed and in pain, he's also just awkward and weird and not into the same things that other folks are into. And I think it's really interesting too that Anais, as much as he loves Cass, he inadvertently really, really hurts Cass. Even when he's just like, boys don't do that, we can forget that ever happened, really kind of invalidates Cass when they were kids and Cass kissed him because Cass had a crush on him. I also love that his issues with Dean and Cass have nothing to do with really the fact that Dean is a man. He's not like, he's like, hey, I like Winchester. He's a good guy. He's a fun guy. And I think you two are cute together. However, we're in a war zone and maybe you could focus on your job instead of the pretty boy.
But I feel like even if Cass had been straight and Dean were a girl, he would still have been like, hey,
exactly.
I got here first.
Yeah. And well, that's the thing is, that's what I love about it is like none of his issues with Dean and Cass have anything to do with the fact that they're a same-sex relationship. It's just like, hey, I was here first. He's my bestie. And also we got to go kill Mr. Hitler.
Well, and their relation, the whole fact that they're having a relationship with Cass as the commander and Dean reporting to him, like we didn't even talk about that, but that's really problematic. Like the power imbalance and the fact that, you know, they were engaging in this, you know, I have to call you sir. And
oh my God. But I love so much when they first kiss that first time and Dean's like, are you sexually attracted to me? And like Cass is full blown gay panicking.
Right.
And then Dean kisses him and Cass kisses back and he's like, oh my God, I'm kissing a colleague. Wait, I'm kissing a subordinate, and then loses all of his brain. Like, I love that it does call back there that Cass is like, I am kissing my senior medic. I'm in love with a subordinate. This isn't cool. And he just keeps doing it. Yeah. They're a little toxic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The power imbalance is definitely a problem. It's very toxic. And at times you're reading it and it's just downright cringy. You're like, oh, God, you know, like, no, it would, at the very least, you need to put the
a little hot, though. I'm not sure.
You know, at the very least, I feel like they should have put the Sir Sergeant stuff away when they were, gosh.
Cass needed that though. Cass needed to be able to have that.
He did, but it's very problematic. You know, like you can't be engaging in those kind of relationships with your subordinate, especially in the military. Like that's a lot of problem.
Yeah, you can use that language if you're in a particular type of relationship, and it's okay for you to.
If we've all agreed to safe, sane, and consensual. Yes. Yes. There was nothing sane about this situation.
Yes, true. Judy, were there any characters that you wanted to talk about? Any of the other characters outside of the two main?
I mean, in Anais too. I mean, I loved what she did with them. A little part of me would have liked to have seen it be like Gabriel or Balthazar or something, just because we know them so well. And, you know, you can picture them and hear them and see them, where, you know, Anais might have had 5 minutes of screen time. So he might as well have been an original character. But I do love what she did with him and how much she built him so that you really cared. And again, he was complex. You really loved this guy. You knew how much he loved Cass. But he was also hurting Cass unintentionally at the same time. And there was just such a complicated push-pull. And I mean, how many of us have been in those kind of, not really trio, but that kind of relationship in our own lives where, you know, maybe our best friend was jealous when we started dating somebody or vice versa. Like, people can get possessive of love, even though it's an infinite resource. So yeah, that was
weird.
Yeah.
People get weird.
They do.
You know,
look at the whole Sam Dane Cass
You
thing.
don't have to call me out here. You don't have
there's
to
a
do
big
that.
portion of the fandom that
can talk
thinks
about
that, Dean's love is finite. He can't love Cass if he
Right.
loves Dean,
Mhm.
Dean or Sam, and he can't love Sam if he loves, like, love is infinite. It's not pie. So
Yeah. And there's
It is
all different
pie.
kinds of love. There's not just
Absolutely.
romantic love. And I
But-
think that's what's
Yeah.
cool about
I mean,
that. Like,
I think we could argue that for Dean, love is pie.
Well, that's
Pie
true.
is love.
But
3.14.
bring that up. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. Another character I just wanted to bring up a little bit. I just thought it was great what she did with Charlie.
Yes.
How she brought a transgender character in. It kind of, to me, it was like a callback to Christine Jorgensen, who, if anybody doesn't know, was a transgender woman who actually went and fought in World War II and came out and became famous for her gender transformation after the war. So it kind of was a little bit of a callback to that. And I love the way in 1944, both Dean and Cass were a little confused by the situation and but they both understood that it's another brand of queer, you know what I mean? Like that it's just a little bit different, but they understood, like, Charlie's queer, like we are, but a little different than we are. So I thought that was really cool what she did with Charlie.
Yeah. I just wanted to hop on. I think I actually really loved the fact that Anais was not Gabriel or Balthazar or anything. Not because I don't like Gabriel or Balthazar. I loved Gabriel in his role as kind of always like munching on a sweet or is it the D rations or whatever when eating the tiny bit of chocolate they have. I love that. What I loved about Anais not being him is we all have preconceived notions on who Gabriel is and who Balthazar are and who those characters are. And I don't think either of those characters really fit with what Cass needed Anais to be. And he could have been much more supportive of Castiel, but you have to also think in the context of the time. He was as supportive as you could imagine someone being, honestly, at that time. He never really disparaged Cass. He did say the boys don't do that, but to him, boys don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's a huge gap in education when it comes to Anais.
Yeah. You think?
Yeah. It's not like right now, like we can hop on Twitter and meet just like tons of people who are different from us in one way or another. This is like a very limited resource pool that's already suppressed and that you don't have access to. And when your only person is that one person, then and that's why I was saying, from a modern reading, it is kind of like easy to be like, that's not okay.
Why didn't you do more?
Better. Right. But it's because the times and whatnot.
Yeah. And there's only one other character I wanted to mention, and only very briefly. Cole Trenton shows up for 15 seconds, and Dean beats the shit out of him for saluting Cass, and that's one of my favorite. Like, yes, please. That's the only time I want Cole in any fic is Dean beating the crap out of him.
Beaten up. Yes, accepted.
Yes, and I was going to mention Charlie. I thought it was such a beautiful thing what they did with Charlie. In that, I also love that because this is a war time, there aren't very many female characters that were going to be. I love how they brought Lisa in as Elise. Mm-hmm. I loved how Joe Harvell is still there as Joe Harvell. It's just Joe. And like Donald Hanscom and Johnny Mills. Yeah. And I just thought it was really beautiful how the writer was able to bring in these characters that we love to be the background and to kind of paint this wonderful backdrop. And you feel the camaraderie between all of them so much, and all the shit talking and all the ribbing and giving each other a hard time.
It felt real. It felt so real. It
felt really real. Yeah. And I did such a good job of making Cass a contrast to all of that. Yeah. Because they all like jibe at each other and poke each other in the ribs like it tends to happen about like sexuality or being manly enough or anything like that. And it's interesting to see Cass's reaction to Anais calling him babe. And then that first time when he's at lunch with Dean and Dean calls him sweetheart and then starts poking at this bear until Cass loses it. And I thought that was such an interesting way to show the stark difference in the relationship Cass has with Anais versus Dean, even in the very beginning. And when Cass teaches him how to say, I want to suck your dick in French, chef's kiss.
So I have to make one more little character
I'm doing
observation.
the best I can, Aaron.
Go ahead, Judy.
I loved Clueless Sam. Sam was like, "You're what?" Like he just didn't get it, and that Jess got it. I mean, like, look at all you have to do is watch these two make eye contact for like 30 seconds, and you know that they're more than war buddies. So I just thought that like Clueless Sam not getting it at first was really cute, and then when he finally did understand, and of course was like accepting as much as you can be at the time, and probably even more so than most people would be. So yay to Sam. We didn't get much Sam in this fic, but what we did get I loved.
And Tanya, were there any other characters you wanted to mention?
I think we covered it. I would just say again with what Judy had just mentioned about Jess versus Sam. Jess plays a really fun role in this kind of letting with Destiel. Like that's a cool scene where she's like, I know, and you're part of his family. And yeah, I think that was really well done.
Yeah, because it did. Bailey asked, Jess knew as soon as she saw Cass, right? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, I just want to wrap up with talking about the ending and the way the fic ends and what you thought about that, Carla.
I thought I was going to die a little bit inside because my fic was ending and it was ending beautifully, and nothing could ever top that. You just get these letters from Dean that we've talked about before and how beautifully they wrap up that part of it. You get the relief of knowing that Dean is alive, and that even though he's gone through so many awful, horrible things to come out to the other side, he goes through them and he makes it. And that Cass, he takes his time to make his way over to Dean, I think is also important and significant for him because he has been through so much. So he really did need to stop and breathe for a little bit. And yes, deal with his fear. I think if he had gone straight to Dean, it may not have worked out the way that we get, simply because he really needed that buffer to let everything settle in his mind in some way or another. Trauma is so difficult to process, no matter who you are. And for Cass, in order for him to be able to move through anything, he really needs to just sit with it and really deal with it like that. And just that beautiful, oh my God, that absolutely heartbreakingly beautiful ending where he's building up the courage to knock, and then Dean opens the door and there's silence and it's just them looking at each other. And the only thing that Dean says is, "Hey, sweetheart." I mean, just cue the waterworks, because it is the perfect ending to a book, the perfect ending. You don't really need much more beyond that. And that's why I think it was perfect. And yeah, there are timestamps and everything, which it's nice that it's not part of the novel, because I think if it had kind of accompanied that and been part of that, like this is just bonus fluffy, not fluffy, but it's bonus stuff that you get after that. But you've had a moment to really just enjoy this lush meal, really just take it all in and enjoy it, and enjoy that this was the way that it ended, and that it wraps it up so beautifully and perfectly, and then you get some more, and that's fine. I think that's like, and you don't really lose anything by not reading the timestamps, to be perfectly honest. They're nice to have, but they're not necessary, because like I said, the ending is so perfect.
Well, that's where you get Sam's reaction and stuff like that. Sam doesn't.
Yeah, but we don't really care about Sam. The point is,
well, we just talked. We just talked about it a little bit.
No.
That's not in the actual.
Okay, if I could finish. But yeah, like the Sam point of view is really only there to kind of be part of Dean's of what Cass is coming into, and to know that Dean is okay. Because I think more importantly than anything, you need to know that Dean is okay before Cass even shows up. If it had been Cass just showing up and you don't get anything about what's going on in Dean's kitchen and with Dean's life, I don't think you'd have the same satisfaction as you do the way that it is written. Because it doesn't give you the time to really have that sense of relief that yes, this man is still alive and is still whole in as many ways as he can be, having gone through this, that he has support, that he has love, that he does have somebody to call home. Not some place, but somebody. But I mean, like it's nice to have, but like I said, for me, like what really just made it the perfect ending was that "Hey, sweetheart" at the very end, and you just cry and like want to kind of die in a good way. It's beautiful. That's all I care about.
Judy, your thoughts on the ending?
First of all, Bailey, we are not getting a fish. That was an audible gasp moment for me. Yes. I was like, oh, did you just say that? Oh my God. Loved it. Yeah, so the ending, I too love the ending, Carla. The "Hey, sweetheart," and when Cass was just so overwhelmed, all he could do was just burst out with "I love you." Like, and it's, right? It's sometimes just this saying it, like the show, that was so cathartic for him, and it meant so much to him that he could finally get it out, that they could finally be happy. So yeah, I absolutely love that. It was still the 1940s. They still had to be careful and quiet, but I just love that they managed to make it work, and they were so important to each other. And kind of, call back to what Dean had said, like, don't we deserve some happiness after this? And, we've just lived in fear for the last several years. Don't we deserve a little bit of peace and happiness of our own? So I love that they finally, found their little piece of happiness. And I adored the two Kodas. They really show that, long after the war is over, it continues to stay with them. Like the war never left them for years and years. It's always a part of them. That kind of trauma is just bone deep. And they found this just kind of quiet domestic peace and happiness with each other. That those are like my favorite kind of endings with them. It doesn't need to be fireworks. I just love that they find peace with each other. And so that's like one of my favorite things, whether it's, overcoming their past or finding, happy moments like Christmas, or even grumbling and arguing like an old married couple. So yeah, I love the Kodas, and I just love that they were able to overcome all that they faced and just realize that what they found was more important than anything else.
Meg.
Yeah, I think Judy, when you mentioned just now, when Dean said, "Don't we deserve this?" that was like such a moment for me, because Dean is finally saying, I deserve something. I deserve to be happy. Dean, who never thinks he deserves anything, is like, no, we've earned this. we deserve that. And that was beautiful for me to see from Dean. I personally loved the ending. I thought it was... I know people who were like, well, thank God there were timestamps, because that ending just kind of broke my heart a little bit. And I can understand feeling a little bit bereft at the ending of there, because they're like, well, what happens next? But I think what's beautiful about this story and about this ending is, you don't have to be told that the these two people are going to be okay. They're going to be all right. They have each other. They're going to be okay. And I love the timestamps. I love the codas adding on. And I actually especially love. So when I get to the end of this fic, when I get to the end of the chapter, the last chapter, I open another screen. I have my Kindle and then I have my phone, and I jump back between Dean's letters and the dates they correspond with in the fic. Like, it doesn't matter that I've just read it. I jump back every single time. I have them all bookmarked to make sure that I
do the same thing,
because it adds so much. And I think what's really great about the second or the first timestamp is it goes by like 42 days later after Cass comes back, 376 days later. And you can see how far they come, but how much further they still have to go. And if you want to see some of that domestic struggle, because there is a lot of struggle, there is a lot of PTSD there that they're both dealing with, you can have that. If you want to feel like Cass came to Dean, which I think it was so important that Cass went to Dean, because Dean spent all of this time going to Cass over and over and over again. And Cass making that journey to go to Dean and to be with him, I thought was so, so important. But if you want that ending, if you want to just like, well, that's it, they're together, they're happy, and that's it, and that's all we want to know, and they're happily ever after, and this was a magical universe in Kansas where everyone in Kansas in the 40s was fantastic with them, and it's beautiful. You can have that. I know that the author, I was fortunate when the first time I read this, the writer still had their Tumblr active, and they had links in it, and they're like, hey, originally this was going to be a major character death, but then she realized that if she killed Dean, Cass would just go home and kill himself. Like, there would be nothing for him. And I love how she changed it, and I love how she changed it in a way that didn't feel unrealistic. I know that there are some people, like I said, who aren't as big of a fan of this ending and need those timestamps, but I just thought it was beautiful. And I finish it and I immediately start it over again, because I'm never ready to say goodbye to this version of these characters.
Tanya, your thoughts on the ending?
Yeah, first I want to throw back to something Carla said. If I could finish, that's what she said. And
that's what she always says. Carl and I have this wonderful ongoing thing where I cannot contain myself. I like how Jesse is like, Megan has admirable self-control, and I just don't at all. Not even a little bit.
That's fair. I just had to get that in there. That's what she said for the episode. Yeah,
That's what he said.
Yeah, there you go.
Put it on the bingo card.
Yes, yuppers. So yeah, I think the ending was satisfactory. It was tough to kind of read the pain and trauma, but I think it made sense to do that as opposed to a character death. And I do think this really exemplified the concept of home is not a place, it's a person. And I think that wrapped that up really, really nicely. And the timestamps are interesting. I think I could go either way with those, but I do think I like that they showed that these two had a relationship that was not perfect, that was still, they still had to struggle and kind of deal with each other's trauma. And they did so in a way that was supportive. In terms of Dean saying, I had another thought, like in terms of Dean saying things like, we deserve this and we deserve to be happy. It made me think about, some of our African-American veterans who returned from the war and were denied inclusion in things like the VA homes and the GI Bill and things like that. And I found that parallel interesting in terms of what would that be like to have served for your, fought for your country and to come home and be of this marginalized status by the society and be denied some of the equality you were fighting for other people. And I as a person of privilege, I don't have a great perspective on that, and I'm not a veteran, but I think that this offered some of us from those positions some insight, a little insight into that. And then I've read a lot about that history as well, but interesting.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this. I think this was a really good discussion. It made me appreciate, as someone who's only read this fic once and then kind of glanced over it in preparation for this, I did appreciate listening to everybody talking about it and how much it meant to you. And it just once again reaffirms that fanfic is very important and it's not frivolous, and give fanfic the respect it deserves, please. So I just want to add that. So we're going to go ahead and close out. And thank you also to everyone who has watched and come in and out throughout. Really appreciate it. And a special shout out again to Bailey, because Bailey is so incredibly supportive. She's one of the best supporters that you could have.
She's practically a panelist.
She practically is a panelist. Yes. And special shout out to her too, because this has been a very rough week for me personally. And she sent me some beautiful, wonderful messages that really meant a great deal to me. So thank you so much, Bailey. That really meant a lot, and I appreciate that. And and thank you for supporting this show. You're an amazing human being. So I just wanted to give you a quick shout out there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close out. And Carla, if you want to say where you can be found in the podcast as well.
Do I want to be found? Meg and I want to be found through our podcast, Bedwet or Behead Pod, which you can find through any podcast dealer. And you can also find our Twitter at Bedwet Behead Pod, our Instagram, bed.wed.behead.pod, or on Facebook, you can look for Bedwet or Behead Podcast. And we will be there to brighten your day, much like the chipmunks. Guaranteed to brighten your day.
Carla sings bingo card. Awesome. And then Judy.
My main fandom presence is on Tumblr, and that is Angels Watching Over, all one word. I'm on Instagram, but it's not really fandom-y stuff, but that is Ballroom Blitz Geek, all one word as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. And Meg?
First, I feel like I need to apologize to Bailey, who said that this fic brought her into the supernatural fandom, and I'm so sorry. Not really.
No, supernatural fandom is awesome.
Not really.
With a few little, we got some problems. We got some problems. But...
Look at Carla's face.
Oh no! I broke Carla.
I'm so sorry.
We found each other.
I am not
the supernatural fandom.
Exactly. So
I am also
I will always
not.
Be grateful.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm also not even a little bit sorry. You can find me at Wisconsinac, and I'm not going to spell it this time. That should be my bingo card. Meg spells her Twitter at.
I've got to go through and redo the bingo cards. I've been tailoring them towards Carla, since she's been like,
I know. I've seen Eurovision. Carla sings. Carla does an impression. Carla's on.
I'm a co-host, so
yeah, I feel like your free space should perpetually be Carla is on. You have her almost as much as I do.
Okay, calm down, Anais.
Oh, we did get Eurovision. I got a bingo. I won't take it.
I didn't know you were playing.
Nice.
And then Tanya, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AK Nerd Fighting, and that's about 50-50 dumb jokes and academic-y stuff. So good luck with that, I guess. Good luck to me. I don't know.
So this episode is really a good representation of who you are on Twitter.
No.
You did the beautiful academics and
That's
a whole bunch of nerdy lame jokes.
That's fair. That's fair. Bad
Where's your Toblerone and your hot tamales? Just like this fandom thing sticker will be stuck on you.
That's amazing.
Yeah, right next to my other whoops, I'm trying to cover up the naughty one, which is my wonderful eat doo-doo. You Can Eat Doo-Doo, which I know that was that's a spoiler. I love that movie, and I know he's not Cap in that movie, but I think this was Steve Rogers' internal monologue a lot. Like, you can eat doo-doo, you can eat doo-doo, eat doo-doo.
I love that you covered up the bad word, and I'm just proud of myself for going an hour without dropping the F-bomb.
No, you dropped one before you dropped the second one. I was counting.
Did.
Oh,
you did.
No! I tried so hard.
That's
I have
okay.
children. You would think I'd be better at this.
We tried so hard and came so far. Anyway,
I just tell my kids not to repeat it.
Okay, this is Erin. You can follow me on Twitter at @AprilBeauty. The E and the A and the B are capitalized. I have been posting more on Twitter because Carla is watching Queer as Folk again. And even though she breaks my heart because she hates Brian so much, it still is great to watch her fall in love with other things. And there's also things that'll happen. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to bite my tongue because I want to comment and say something, but it'll spoil something big coming up. So also, please go watch Queer as Folk. You know, I rewatched it again for our show that's coming up. And that show just... I mean, yes, it has some issues, but it's so great and wonderful. So please go discover that show if you haven't already discovered that show, and then tell me that you're watching it. So and you can follow the show
and tell her all the problems you have with Brian.
No, do not tell me all the problems you have with Brian. One person having problems with Brian is enough for me. I get it. Brian is an ass. I get it. And he has a mighty fine ass too, but so I get it, but I love Brian. But be sure to follow the show on Facebook at facebook.com/itsafandom_thing_pod, on Twitter at fandomthingpod. No, it's in that one. On Instagram at itsafandom_thing_pod. If you have any feedback, if you would like to potentially be on our upcoming Halloween trivia event, if you're like a creator, a horror creator, if you're a horror podcast host and you would like to be on one of them as a co-host, not competing, please reach out to us at itsafandom_thing_pod@gmail.com. And if you want to compete, look for more information late June, early July about little things that are going to happen. We're probably going to have the trivia nights happens on weekends and weekdays because the poll was completely tied. So I'm going to kind of make it a mixture of both just because I think that'll help too, since it's going to be a team event. And also feel free to reach out to us with any kind of feedback, any comments like that. I want to again say, if you want to support the show and help us continue to do these live streams and continue to bring you content, and also help One Black Lives Matter organization and One Stop Asian Hate organization, please subscribe to the show today for just $2.99 a month, not very much at all. And you'll also get some bonus content, including right now, you can listen to our Christian effing Bale episode as many times as you want to if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, you can't listen to that right now. So please go there. I'm also thinking some of our bonus content might be discussing other fanfics. So if there's fanfics you want us to discuss in any fandom, pretty much, go ahead and reach out to us about that too. And that might be one of them. And then, of course, you'll get shout outs on our live streams. And after 6 months of support, you'll get a chance to be on an episode or to determine a topic that we cover within reason. So please go to that link. I also put the link in the comments. The link, of course, will be in the show notes. The link is at any one of on our not LinkedIn. It's not called LinkedIn, but our thing of links.
Linktree.
Our thing of links. I like calling it our thing of links. But yes, so please just, if you want to support the show, to subscribe, that would be awesome. And once again, thank you to everyone who has watched this live stream, watched any of our live streams. As far as our live stream next week goes, I'm not sure what it's going to be because I was trying to get some local drag queens, but I'm a moron and forgot that that weekend is Pride weekend here in Denver. So that's probably not going to be happening. And so it will probably be a hodgepodge of discussing other LGBTQIA plus stuff. So
I mean, you could also just have me come on and sing George Michael songs.
So our panelists that are on here right now are invited to be on that one if they want to. It would be at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time next Saturday. So, and Meg, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you so much. I know that Carla and I kind of bullied you into doing this episode because we're garbage people who want to, like Carla said, she will run down friends and family alike to make them.
You must go read this. Yeah.
But thank you so much, because I don't feel like fanfic in general gets nearly enough respect. And to have a whole episode of this dedicated to any fan fiction, to be perfectly honest.
Down to Evanport. I've been ranting about that one forever.
That's a work in progress at a million words, and I'm not ready for that yet. But this one in particular, I don't feel like gets enough attention within the fandom, even. And it's so beautiful, and it's such a beautiful story. And just thank you so much for letting us come on and really fangirl all over the place for this story. Mm-hmm. Like thank you for not erasing my insert line of the Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, you did?
Not exactly, but pretty much. I was like, yeah, we should really, like, Carl and I really kind of dogpiled on Aaron a little bit about doing it, because we just love it so much.
We appreciate that, not only that you let this happen, but also that you didn't like turn around and block us on every way that we can communicate with you. We really are.
We understand.
Wait, is Bailey shouting out for 4-letter word?
Yeah, Aaron, that's next.
That's another amazing one. Yes.
Dean is written really
I don't know
well.
What that is.
Dean's written really well in it, actually.
Oh no. Okay, let her breathe. We just
never
got through this
next
one.
week.
She's never gonna let us back.
You just said that you don't have one for next week.
We're not going to do a fanfic.
Let it go, Meg.
We should need like a weekly Destiel fanfic.
I can't be there next week, but I'm definitely sending you my comments if you're doing that one, and my jokes. I'll write them out ahead of time.
We're not going to do a fanfic. It's not that we won't do other fanfics. Like I said, that can be the bonus episodes. If you subscribe, will be fanfic ones. But next week we'll just do like a random hodgepodge of just.
I like the idea of being a bonus. I just want to say, like extreme gold turquoise executive level, like in Gish.
You get to hear my thoughts about fanfic. Tanya, just send all of your jokes to me and Carla, and we will seamlessly incorporate them into
That's what he said.
I have one more slight comment I forgot to make about 91 Whiskey. None of us talked about the sex scenes, which are dirty and not in the good way. Oh my gosh. How often were you reading it going, "No, you're too dirty. Don't put your mouth there."
As a person with certain anatomy, I was like, you would have a bacterial infection, and maybe people with that anatomy also get that, but I was very worried about
the excitement over the surgical jelly. Cracked me up a lot.
Oh god.
And also, I feel like it should be noted that these men did not shower for 4 months at a time.
That is don't put your mouth there. Just
that
stop
is
it.
Love. That is dedication. They didn't even get the I'm not going to say it because it's a bad word, bath, where you just wash the pits,
right,
and the crevices. Like, they didn't even get that.
The lady of the night bath.
Yes. I actually
working girl bath.
When we're not on live, I will tell you guys what I said to my husband that made him be like, "Oh yeah, you're a classy lady."
I mean, when I was in a war zone, I didn't have a shower for 4 months, I must say. However, I was bathing in my little
you had
thing every single day. And I definitely did my lady of the night bath.
Aaron's like, I just tried to wrap up, and you guys.
I know.
No,
Sorry. That was one more thing. I'm like, we have to talk about this.
Yeah, I think that too. I thought that too when I was reading.
It was hot and dirty, and also
trying not to think how
just too dirty. Too dirty.
Like I just pretend that they just didn't talk about their
and guts and gun
oil.
oil.
I just pretend that there's a lake nearby and that they went and bathed whenever they could. And that's how I got around that.
I love that it was pointed out though in like almost every time they're together, it's pointed out that it's really gross.
I know.
Like when Dean does that thing that Benny told him Cass would love because Benny's girl loved it.
That's why I said to put your mouth there.
And then he tried to kiss Cass, and Cass was like, "Oh no, I just know where your mouth is." I was like, that's realistic. That's the realism I want in my sex.
Yes.
On that note, I wanted to say what we're going to be. So next week on our live stream, since it does not appear that we're going to have drag queens on, like I was hoping, because we are going to be discussing RuPaul's Drag Race next week, which I've been watching for the first time ever, and it's been very interesting to watch. So we're going to be discussing that. That'll be a lot of fun. So that's why I wanted to have that, and then didn't happen. But so we're going to do just more of a hodgepodge. So if there's any movie, television show, anything like that you want us to possibly, if we've seen it, talk about, go ahead and let us know, DM us, message us, whatever you want to do on that. And on our next non-streaming episode, we already recorded it. We recorded it last night. We are revisiting Queer as Folk. And you think this is long? We stopped about over 3 hours. So a lot of that's going to be cut though. So it's not going to be a 3-hour episode, but it was a lot of fun. It was a great panel. Carla was on there as well. And we had both Ishel and Ken, the hosts of the amazing podcast, Liberty Diner Dish. And then we also had Danelle on, and Danelle was the only one on there that has been on the first Queer as Folk episode. So if you haven't listened to that, please listen to that first. That's our second most popular episode. And my goal is for it to become the most popular episode.
Carla was on an episode?
I know. And she's also going to be on the Schitt's Creek episode, which will be
you know how I'm so shy. I don't know what's bringing this out in me.
I know. Carla's basically, and then Carla's going to be gone for a long time, just preparing everybody. Unless she's on our live stream this next Saturday, she's going to be gone for a long time, which is just really kind of bizarre.
So, like,
it
Carla,
feels weird for me. I'll tell you.
It'll be 4 weeks.
Yeah. and now I did work this. This actually is going to be a thing, but I'm working this in also because I know this is kind of cheating, but I want to also mention that I am thinking that we can do a bonus episode discussing a movie that we love, that a lot of us love, and we support this director a lot. We are actually, we might even talk about Werewolves Within, but we're going to talk about Scare Me. This is something that even the director doesn't know we're doing this. By the amazing Josh Rubin, who is just incredible and is going to explode. I am telling you, he's going to become the biggest thing, and he deserves it because he is the nicest, genuinely, truly great person in Hollywood. So if you want to watch this movie and you don't want to rent it, although rent it, go to Shudder. And that's where it's streaming. So I have a feeling that just got the bingo for Bailey.
Yes, Bailey, you can continue to wallpaper your house and it's a Random Thing stickers.
Yes, so watch that. And even if you're not into horror, you can definitely watch this movie. It's much more, it's a horror comedy, and there's a lot of comedy in it. And so I really do think, even if you don't like horror, you will be able to handle this. So go to Shudder, watch that, look for more news on that. And Jess, that did get her the bingo. That's happened this is the third time that Shudder has gotten the bingo.
Carla, you're not on again till August.
Yep.
I know, believe me.
I can't believe Aaron hasn't started shuffling the schedule.
Like I look at that schedule constantly and I'm like, can I feign an interest in any of these topics?
I'm going to sign you up. I'm going to sign you up.
No, don't, because I don't know any of that
She
stuff.
might be on one of the bonus episodes. Hey, you might be on the Scare Me episode.
I really
that will
want
be
to
a bonus. That will probably be a bonus. I'm not positive it'll be a bonus, but it'll definitely be an episode we're going to do.
You can be on book adaptations that are better than the original and just pretend you read the books and be like, yeah, they're way better.
But if Scare Me happens, I am there. I love Josh Rubin and I love Scare Me.
Yes. And so maybe that should be a bingo.
No one is going to get bingo now until the end of August when Carla comes back because she has so many squares on the bingo.
I know, that's the problem. That's why I need to stitch it up anyway. Anyway, so lots of little tangents there, but yeah, look for that. So I was already thinking of doing that, but then when I realized that would probably get a bingo, I'm like, I should mention this now. So that won't be until July, probably, though, at the soonest. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and close out. And I'm going to also, once again, close out promoting our horror trivia event, which the video I'm going to play here. So I just want to say again, thank you to my wonderful panelists. Thank you so much, Carla, Judy, Meg, and Tanya for joining us. And thank you again to everyone who has watched both beginning, middle, whenever you hopped on. It really means a lot to me. So thank you so much. And until next time, remember, it's a fandom thing. Black Lives Matter and stop Asian hate. So thank you so much.